Chapter 1307. I'm not joking, Long Sheng muttered in a low voice, his face full of sorrow and regret. The person who sold the peaches was too lucky. Alas, say it, say it. I will do my best to complete the task that Miss Ninth instructed me to do. Qin Yu pretended not to hear the first part and cupped his hands together. Many thanks, Lord Dragon Sage. Without beating around the bush, he went straight to the point. May I ask, Lord Dragon Sage, have you heard of the two names, Hidden Pearl or Exploring the Sea? Long Sheng shook his head. I've never heard of it, but this name sounds like it has something to do with my Eastern Sea. As he spoke, he glanced at Zhang Xian. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. But thinking about it, how could someone of the Dragon Saint status know the names of two juniors? According to what I know, they're indeed people from the East Sea, and they seem to have some background. They call the almighty being of their family an old ancestor. Those who were qualified to be called ancestors were definitely not ordinary. Embarrassment flashed across Long Sheng's face for a brief moment before he coughed lightly. If that's the case, then this king might have guessed a few things. The Eastern Sea is too big. It's inevitable that there will be some heretics. After thinking for a while, he continued, If Miss Ninth isn't in a hurry, you can rest for the time being. I'll find someone to ask, and I'll be able to confirm it. It's urgent. Long Sheng paused for a moment. That's fine, too. I'll have to ask Miss Ninth to wait here for a moment. As he spoke, he rapped his fingers on the chair, producing a metallic sound. Outside the study, the old tortoise's respectful voice rang out. What are your orders? Summon black armor. Yes. Obviously, old tortoise knew Long Sheng's temperament very well. If he called for help before the guests were properly settled, it must be an urgent matter. After using the transportation formation, Black Armor quickly pushed the door open and entered. Greetings, Lord Dragon Sage. He paused for a moment before he continued. Greetings, Miss Ninth. His heart was filled with emotions. Not too long ago, he had the qualifications to stand on the same arena as Qin Yu. But now, they were people from two completely different worlds, and they couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Long Sheng waved his hand. Get up. Black Armor, I have something to ask you. Have you ever heard of the names Hidden Pearl and Exploring the Sea? Black Armor cupped his hands together. Reporting to Dragon Sage, Tanhai is a general under Black Turtle in the Scarlet Peak Strait. I once fought with him, but as for the other name, I have never heard of him. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Hidden Pearl and Exploring Sea came from the same place. Finding one was enough. He met the Dragon Sage's eyes and nodded. Miss Ninth is here to look for these two people. This matter is a secret, so don't leak anything. After Long Sheng instructed, he turned around and explained, Black Armor has been stationed in the Crimson Peak Strait all these years, so he's the most familiar with that place. Mr. Ninth, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Qin Yu said, Black Armor, can you give me an overview of the Scarlet Summit Strait? Black Armor glanced at Long Sheng, coughed, and waved his hand, saying, Since Miss Ninth has asked, you must answer truthfully. Do not hide anything. Yes, this subordinate understands. Black Armor bowed. Reporting to Mr. Ninth, the Scarlet Summit Strait is located in the extreme north of the East Sea. It is covered in snow and ice, and its master is a 10,000-year-old black turtle. Its strength is tyrannical, and it has never obeyed the control of the Dragon Palace. It is the largest rebel force in the East Sea, and there are many vicious deep-sea creatures gathered under its command. Speaking truthfully was speaking the truth, but he still had to embellish it a little. Did he really have to directly tell Qin Yu that this black turtle was incomparably powerful, and that his Lord Long Sheng had tried to subjugate it again and again without being able to gain the slightest bit of advantage? Thus, he simply tacitly agreed that the Scarlet Summit Strait status was the same as a country within the East Sea. Ahem, even though that was what he meant now, at least it sounded better. Qin Yu could certainly understand what he meant. If the Eastern Sea Dragon Sage was helpless against this black turtle old ancestor, then his strength was inevitably terrifying. His eyes flashed. He asked, Has there been any unusual movements in the Scarlet Summit Strait recently? Black Armor shook his head. There's no obvious abnormality. He paused and hesitated for a moment. But not long ago, there seemed to be a turbulence in the Scarlet Summit Strait, causing many deaths and injuries. But the movement soon disappeared, and it didn't cause too much of change. But after that, the defense system of the Scarlet Summit Strait has obviously become much stricter. Chinyu instantly thought of Hidden Pearl. This turbulence and the strengthening of the defense system might be related to her escape. He also asked about the exploration of the sea, and after confirming that it was the same person, he was more confident. Seeing that Chinyu didn't ask any more questions, the Eastern Sea Dragon Sage waved his hand and said, "Black Armor, you can leave first. Don't leave the Dragon Palace for the time being." "Yes, this subordinate will take his leave." Black Armor bowed and left. Chinyu looked at the Dragon Sage. "Is this the Black Turtle Old Ancestor?" The Dragon Sage shook his head. "It's not a true saint, but its strength is very tyrannical, not much weaker than a true saint. More importantly, its turtle shell." At this point, the Dragon Sage sighed, his eyes extremely complex. It's too hard. To be able to make a dignified, true saint sigh with emotion. Although he hadn't personally experienced it, he could still approximate how hard this turtle shell was. Chinyu thought to himself that it was fine. He had hidden his identity when he came to the East Sea, and besides the Dragon Sage father and daughter pair, only his two trusted subordinates knew of his identity. Otherwise, if news of him were to be discovered, there might be other changes. After all, Old Ancestor Black Turtle's consciousness had once descended into Hidden Pearl's body. Chinyu wasn't sure whether or not he knew anything. Although he didn't know what problems Hidden Pearl was facing, just based on what he had done before, Chinyu felt that he should pay a visit. After thinking for a moment, Chinyu cupped his hands across his chest. "Lord Dragon Sage, I must make a trip to the Scarlet Summit Strait." The real show had finally arrived. With Chinyu's current status, he had changed his appearance and come to the East Sea. Was it really just to look for someone? Humph humph. Whoever believed that was an idiot. Although he didn't know how that damn black turtle had managed to provoke this little evil star in front of him, that wasn't important. What was important was that their Lord Dragon Sage, after silently enduring for so many years, had finally found a chance to take revenge for his broken teeth. A sharp light shined in the depths of his eyes. Lord Dragon Sage leaned forward. "Mr. Ninth, forgive me for being presumptuous, but what about you in that black turtle in the Scarlet Summit Strait?" Chinyu said, "We've never met." Dragon Sage's eyes widened, a bit disappointed. He hadn't even met before, so how could there be enmity between them? Even if there was a problem, it shouldn't be too big. This was a bit different from what he had imagined. It seemed that wanting to borrow a knife to kill someone wasn't so simple. Or could it be that this brat Chinyu had realized something and was deliberately hiding it, so he could raise the price? Looking at him carefully, it didn't seem like it. At the very least, when Chinyu said, "We've never met," Dragon Sage was sure that he wasn't lying. "Cough, I see." It wasn't difficult to guess Dragon Sage's thoughts. Chinyu thought for a moment and said, "I am familiar with the East Sea Dragon Palace, and I am also indebted to Lord Dragon Sage for looking after me in the past. If possible, I would naturally stand on the side of the Dragon Palace. However, there are some things that I haven't confirmed yet, so it's not good for me to say anything. How about this? After I enter the Scarlet Summit Strait, I will act according to the circumstances. I ask Lord Dragon Sage to give me a way to contact you." Looking at his current attitude, this was the only way. Dragon Sage took out a dragon scale and said, "When Mr. Ninth needs it, you can find me through this." Chinyu received it and stood up. "If that's the case, then Chinyu won't bother you any longer." He paused for a moment and said, "The Scarlet Summit Strait is heavily guarded. In order to avoid being discovered, I'm afraid I will need Black Armor's help." Dragon Sage said, "No problem. I will give the order. Everything will be in accordance with Mr. Ninth's arrangements." "Thank you, Lord Dragon Sage. Farewell." Chinyu turned and left. But as he turned around, he completed his transformation. Lord Dragon Sage watched everything unfold in front of him. The entire process seemed like a natural growth of flesh and skin, without the slightest abnormality. In other words, even though he had seen Yu transform twice in a row, Dragon Sage still couldn't find any flaws. This was an extremely sad thing. The Peach Garden had a peachwood portal, while the East Sea had a magical giant shell, and it was a living creature. After he followed Black Armor into it, the space fluctuated, and when he stepped out again, he was already at the northernmost part of the East Sea. This was a world covered in ice and snow. After breaking out of the sea, all he could see was white. The air temperature was terrifyingly low, and strong winds constantly whistled, sweeping up large pieces of snow, making crackling sounds as they hit the ground. The tents of the East Sea Dragon Palace were built in this world of ice and snow. Black Armor said respectfully, "Mister, please rest for a moment. I will arrange everything soon." Yu nodded casually and was brought into an exquisite and warm tent. After Black Armor gave some detailed instructions, he bowed and left. The 2C race maids secretly looked at Yu from time to time, their eyes filled with awe and curiosity. Clearly, they wanted to know who this divine being was that could make Lord Black Armor treat him so seriously. Probably because he had formed a body of rules. Yu was still Yu, but he was a bit more charismatic than before. This had nothing to do with his appearance. Rather, it was a feeling that came from his flesh and bone marrow, a feeling that could only be sensed but couldn't be described. It had an inexplicable attraction to other beings, and it didn't distinguish between the opposite sex and the same sex. Thus, even though he had transformed, this feeling still existed. It made people subconsciously feel a bit closer to him. It was also because of this that the 2C race maids dared to secretly look at him. If it were any other honored guest, they wouldn't have dared to be so presumptuous. Yu was well aware of this, but he pretended not to notice. Luckily, Black Armor was fast and returned before Yu became impatient. "Mister, everything has been arranged." Yu stood up. "Let's go." Not long after, a small-scale conflict erupted between the East Sea Dragon Palace's station and the patrolling sea folk of the Scarlet Peak Strait. The entire process didn't take long. After around an hour, things calmed down. Both sides left behind several corpses, and the matter came to an end. This kind of conflict was very common here. It would happen every few days, and neither side cared about it. Those bastards from the East Sea Dragon Palace, they were lucky this time to run away. Next time, we will cut off their heads. We killed 2 more, so that's an advantage. Let's go back and celebrate. I don't like these dogs of the Dragon Palace. Next time we have a chance, we will kill 2 more. Beneath the sea, on a strange ship, a group of sea folk who had just retreated from the battlefield laughed. Although many of them were wounded, their morale was very high. There was nothing they could do. Although the Black Turtle Old Ancestor was powerful and the Dragon Sage couldn't do anything to him, he was still suppressed and could only hide in the Scarlet Peak Strait. In terms of overall strength, they couldn't compare with the Dragon Palace. Thus, in these past years of conflicts, the Scarlet Peak Strait had mostly suffered losses. This time, they had counterattacked and killed 2 more. This group of sea folk would more or less receive some rewards, so everyone was naturally excited. As they spoke, a half-human, half-crab man patted the sea folk beside him. "Monsieur, you helped me block a sword attack today. I will remember it. Tonight, I will treat you to a drink. Don't go home until you're drunk." The member of the sea race, who was called Wooden Turtle, nodded with a smile. He was a man of few words, and the other members of the sea race did not mind him. As they spoke, the topic of their conversation began to change, and a burst of strange laughter erupted. Thus, no one noticed that the depths of this sea folk called Monsieur's eyes were always calm and indifferent, without the slightest ripple. Chapter 1308. The rewards were more generous than he had imagined. The sea folk celebrated as scheduled, each one clamoring to stay up all night. Only Monsieur, the normally dull fellow, was disappointed. After drinking 2 cups of wine, he excused himself and left early, causing the sea folk to be greatly dissatisfied. After leaving the room and walking down the street, Monsieur didn't return home as he had said. Instead, He turned into a remote alley and came out with a completely different appearance. He looked up at the crimson light above his head, like a burning flame. Chinyu felt that the most important thing right now was to find out the whereabouts of the hidden bead. However, this matter wasn't something that any random sea folk had the qualifications to know. Thus, he needed a useful identity. In this world, no matter where it was, even if it were the poorest slums, there would still be rankings. Moreover, there was a great city hidden deep in the sea in Scarlet Peak Strait. Although it couldn't compare with the East Sea Dragon Palace in terms of luxury, it wasn't inferior at all. Without needing to ask anyone, just by looking at the size and degree of luxury of the residence, it was enough to judge the status of the owner. Chinyu didn't want to waste time and chose the best place. With his current strength, it would be a joke if he was discovered to climb over a wall. The second unlucky one was a beautiful maid. After asking what she wanted, she was knocked unconscious and thrown under the bed. The other naked sea folk was the unlucky number one of the Scarlet Peak Strait. He had already been interrogated once, but unfortunately, his mouth was too tight and he didn't obtain what he wanted. But that didn't matter. This fact told him that a woman's mouth was sometimes easier to pry open. Since this person refused to cooperate and still wanted to call for help, Chinyu didn't feel any burden. He casually crushed this person to pieces and transformed into the second steward of this mansion. There was no longer a need to hide his identity. He swaggered out the door. Several sea folk waiting outside the courtyard hurriedly bowed. "Greetings, Lord Steward." Chinyu looked back, a relaxed expression on his face. "Suetsue is tired. She will rest in the courtyard for the next few days. Let's temporarily stop our errands." With a smug smile, he swaggered away. The reason why his performance was so lifelike and no one noticed anything wrong was because Chinyu had already observed this second steward style of doing things. He couldn't do the exact same thing, but it wasn't difficult to fool them. He didn't really want to impersonate them and stay here for a long time. He would leave once he got what he wanted. At night, the second steward entered the concubine's courtyard. "Greetings, Lil Aunt." The beautiful Andy's gaze fell on him, and she waved her hand. "All of you can leave first." Chinyu furrowed his eyebrows. He originally wanted to inquire about the whereabouts of the master of this residence, but before he could say anything, he felt that something wasn't right. Although the woman across from him was calm, there seemed to be a hint of lust in her eyes. "No way. Damn you. Why are you here tonight? Didn't I tell you that old master will come over to sleep today?" The ant came over with a fragrant wind and pinched him hard. Chinyu looked up at her and smiled. "Is that so? Isn't that great?" 2 hours later, the old master entered the concubine's courtyard in a good mood. But for some unknown reason, he soon flew into a terrible rage. He announced that the concubine's courtyard was sealed and no one was allowed to enter or leave at will. Then he stormed away in a huff. Everyone said that it was because the concubine and the second steward were a bit indiscreet, and the old master had discovered something fishy. For a time, rumors spread through the courtyard, and some jealous women laughed so hard that their mouths almost reached their ears. As a group of women were discussing how to completely trample the concubine under their feet so that she would never have a chance to rise again, the master of the residence, Mu, went out. As one of the generals under old ancestor Black Turtle, his authority was certainly high enough. He arrived outside the dungeon unimpeded. "Old master, we're here." Chinyu grunted and walked down from the carriage with a gloomy face. He wasn't familiar with this eight-eyed monster, so if he didn't say anything, he might as well maintain his angry appearance. This trick was very effective. No one dared to look at Lord Mu, let alone notice his abnormality. "Lord Mu, why are you here? Didn't you just finish your shift? You shouldn't be on duty today." The dungeon guard was puzzled. Chinyu furrowed his eyebrows, thinking about what to say. "Oh, it's like that." But just as he was about to speak, he was interrupted. "Mu General, the old ancestor ordered us to take turns on duty. It isn't appropriate for you to come here today." The person sneered, his expression unkind. Chinyu didn't recognize him, but it was clear that this sea folk didn't like the Mu General. If he couldn't call out his name, he would be exposed. Luckily, the dungeon guard helped Chinyu out of trouble. "Greetings, Lord Ku Chung." Chinyu coughed. Ku Chung, I have a secret order with me today. It is not good for others to know of this. Come with me. Ku Chung frowned. He didn't know anything about the secret order, but looking at the Mu general's expression, it seemed there really was such a thing. The old ancestor trusted him a bit more. Ku Cheng's complexion darkened. He coldly coughed. What can't you say in front of everyone? Stop being so secretive. Although he said this, he still stepped forwards. The Mu general certainly knew the importance of the pair of brother and sister imprisoned in the dungeon. If it involved the old ancestor's secrets, then he really couldn't casually reveal it. The Mu general pulled him back. Come with me. The two of them avoided everyone's line of sight. Soon, the Mu general returned, but there was no trace of Ku Chung. The Sifo guards were dumbfounded. They hurriedly asked, Lord Mu, where did our Lord Ku Chung go? Qin Yu said, Ku Chung has other matters to attend to, so he left first. There is no need for you to wait for him. You can go back first. As he spoke, he walked towards the dungeon. Open the door. Today I will be on duty. Although the dungeon guard thought this was a bit strange, as he looked at the Mu general walking towards him, he hesitated for a moment before opening the door. Ku Chung had never been on good terms with the Mu general, but he didn't say anything. It was clear that the secret order he mentioned was true. As soon as he stepped into the dungeon, everything turned dark. Besides the torches on the walls, there wasn't the least bit of light. It was like the inside and outside of the dungeon were two different worlds. The air was cold and gloomy, causing one's heart to subconsciously shiver. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. Hidden in the dim light, he said, Take me to see that pair of brother and sister. The guard respectfully nodded. He lifted his lantern and led the way. The entire dungeon was empty, without the least bit of sound. The only sounds that echoed in the ears were the emotional footsteps. In this sort of environment, one's heart felt heavy and it was difficult to even breathe. This clearly wasn't a simple psychological pressure, but some sort of invisible strength. The guard's complexion paled and the lantern in his hand swayed, as if it would fall at any moment. Lord Mu, this lowly one can only accompany you to this point. Qin Yu nodded without expression. Remember, without my permission, no one is allowed to casually enter. The guard felt as if he had been granted amnesty. He bowed and hurried away. He looked up. The darkness seemed to be a channel that connected to the abyss. Without hesitation, he continued forwards. He could already sense a familiar aura. It was Song Zhu. She really was here. He subconsciously quickened his steps and soon arrived at the deepest depths of the dungeon. This was a large sealed space with only a single stone door connecting it to the outside world. And Song Zhu's aura was coming from behind this stone door. To Qin Yu, the darkness didn't have any practical meaning. He looked down and could see everything. He easily found a token indentation on the stone door. He flipped it over. He took out a token that looked the same as the one on the stone door. Qin Yu paused for a moment and then took out a second token. The second token was obtained from Ku Chung. He certainly didn't have any urgent matters to attend to and was in a hurry to leave. But Qin Yu had no choice but to send him on his way. The two tokens were completely the same. It was just that there were some differences in the textures on the surface. Thinking for a moment, Qin Yu picked up Ku Cheng's token and placed it into the indentation on the stone door. It perfectly embedded in. In the next moment, a pair of blood-red eyes lit up on the stone door. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred, and he instantly changed into Ku Cheng's appearance. Even his aura was the same. The blood-red eyes locked onto Qin Yu. After a few breaths, they were extinguished. Then, the stone door quietly opened. Darkness as deep as ink flowed out. That's right, it was flowing. This word was extremely appropriate here. The aura of the darkness was cold and deathly silent. It was as if an eternal night had descended, drowning everything. This was the aura of Song Zhu. This was what Qin Yu had sensed before. But now that he was facing the darkness, he found something familiar. Thousand Nether Sage. That's right. It was the dark true sage who joined forces with Netherworld Sage outside the Lost Garden to kill him. This was his power. Originally, Qin Yu found it strange. West Mountain Scholar Sage and Netherworld Sage's attack was understandable. But why did Thousand Nether Sage do it? One had to know that Permitha true sages were extremely cautious. If they didn't have sufficient reason or motivation, they wouldn't easily intervene in a battle to kill a true sage. After all, those who wanted to kill could be killed. No matter what they did, they had to pay the corresponding price. Now it seemed that the problem lay with this black turtle patriarch. Lord Dragon Sage's crow's mouth was very good. Although Yu had never met the black turtle patriarch, there was indeed enmity between them. Moreover, it was a life and death enmity. This description was not exaggerated at all. If it weren't for the fact that Yu's body contained the power of the pre-celestial spirit that could be burned, let alone killing a true sage outside the Lost Garden, it would have been difficult for him to escape unscathed. This old turtle in the Scarlet Summit Strait was actually cooperating with Thousand Nether Sage, and it involved Song Zhu and her brother. There must be some hidden story behind this. Thinking further, it was fortunate that Yu was careful enough this time. He had hidden his identity and didn't do anything to alert the enemy. Otherwise, if Thousand Nether Sage and Black Turtle Patriarch joined forces, they might not have been able to control the situation. Although he wasn't necessarily afraid of fighting them head-on, he couldn't guarantee the safety of Song Zhu and her brother. Yu's goal was to save them and return a favor, not to kill them. Yu didn't sense anything wrong. He stepped into the darkness. Netherworld Sage's power was extraordinary. His eyes swept around, but it was as if he was shrouded in mist, unable to see anything clearly. Fortunately, besides this, there were no other dangers. It was clear that Black Turtle Patriarch and Thousand Nether Sage didn't think that anyone could directly break in. After all, the process of Yu entering the dungeon seemed simple and smooth, but everything was based on his superb transformation technique. If it were anyone else, even if they were a true Permitha saint, they wouldn't be able to quietly break in. Yu hadn't found Song Zhu and her brother yet, but he never imagined that he would be discovered by them first. Lord Eight Eyes, why have you come again? If you want to persuade us to give up resisting, then please save your words. We siblings will not sit here and wait for death. It was Song Zhu. Yu quickened his steps and arrived at the center of the sealed space. Finally, he saw her figure. This woman was in the darkness, but she didn't seem affected at all. She was staring at him, her pale face filled with stubbornness and tenacity. He originally wanted to tease her, but as he looked at Song Zhu's sweat-soaked hair and her shivering body, he knew that she was suffering some sort of torment. Yu coughed. Miss Song Zhu, I came here according to our agreement, and I've finally found you. Chapter 1309. This voice, Song Zhu's eyes widened as she stared at the person in front of her. But this person really did have 8 eyes. Whether it was appearance or aura, there was no doubt about it. For the sake of caution, I will temporarily maintain my current appearance. After you delivered me to the altar in the Lost Garden, did you go back to Fintan High? Otherwise, I fear he would have been in great trouble. Yu smiled. He gestured. I don't remember too clearly, but at the time I roughly did this. I casually threw him into a crack in the ground. Song Zhu looked at him in a daze. Yu rubbed his temples. If you don't believe me, then I can only say a few embarrassing things. Tan Hai was attacked by infernal energy and moved against you. You shouldn't have. Shut up. Song Zhu's tears flowed down. She wiped them away. Didn't I tell you not to come? Hurry up and leave. If you are discovered, you are dead. She waved her hands again and again. Hurry up and leave immediately. Whether or not she was sincere, you could certainly feel it. He simply sat down on the ground and smiled. I guess that after you returned to the EC, you were immediately locked up and haven't been in contact with the outside world for a long time, right? He pointed a finger at himself. Yu, was in the EC Dragon Palace not too long ago, happily chatting with the Dragon Sage. When he spoke to me, he had to call me Mr. Ninth. Do you understand what I mean? Song Zhu bit her lips. I don't believe you. Yu snapped his fingers. It doesn't matter if you don't believe me. You will see for yourself in the future. Let's not waste time and find a way to leave here first. He reached out a hand and pressed forward. I'm not crazy, nor am I boasting. Isn't it good to be alive? I wouldn't insist on dying for no reason. To put it bluntly, even if I were discovered today, at worst I would just have to fight and leave. The ones who would suffer would be you too. Qin Yu glanced at the little fellow who was staring at him with wide eyes and a look of disbelief. He smiled and said, "Remember, the reason you were able to survive this time is because you have a good big sister. Remember to treat your big sister well in the future." Song Zhu loosened her tightly clenched lips, revealing a pale face. "We can't leave. The ceremony has begun, and we have already merged into one with the darkness. We are destined to become substitutes for the old ancestor. In other words, you bastard Qin, you came too late. Don't think that I'll be touched. So, you should hurry up and leave. Don't cause trouble for yourself." As for what he said about the dragon sage, calling her Miss Ninth, Song Zhu didn't believe a single word of it. She had seen Qin use strength with her own eyes. Although he was able to unleash extremely powerful strength, it was far from being comparable to a true divine. What's more, apart from the ancestor, there was another terrifying figure in the Scarlet Peak Strait. I haven't seen this guy for a while, and his ability to brag has improved a lot. After a slight hesitation, Song Zhu said, "If you feel that you owe him, then think of a way to save Tanhai. In the end, I was the one who implicated him. As long as you can do that, you and I will be even." Qin Yu revealed a helpless expression. "You still don't believe me. That's right. To be honest, I never thought I would be fierce to such a degree." He raised his hand to stop Song Zhu from speaking any further. "Shut up first. Let me take a good look at what exactly this ritual you're talking about." Song Zhu took a deep breath. Qin Yu gestured for her to keep quiet. "If you speak any more and stir up fluctuations in the power of darkness, then if I really am discovered, it will all be because of you." Song Zhu bitterly glared at him. Then, she simply closed her eyes, covering up the surging emotions in the depths of her eyes. Qin Yu had come to the East Sea. He had actually come, and in her moment of greatest despair and fear, what a pity she wasn't lying. The ritual had already begun. Song Zhu didn't blame Qin Yu for coming late. Perhaps this was her and her little brother's destiny. The darkness fell into silence. Qin Yu really did look. His eyes turned pitch black, as if he were one with the darkness of the outside world. Gradually, the pitch-black darkness in front of him began to change. Countless fine lines extended out, submerging into Song Zhu and her little brother's bodies. But the other lines passed through the darkness and vanished into the unknown. Qin Yu hesitated for a moment and didn't continue investigating. His intuition told him that if he did, he would likely be discovered. But with what he obtained today, as well as the word substitute that Song Zhu mentioned, he could roughly guess what was going on. "Song Zhu, tell me what you know." Qin Yu suddenly paused. He turned around, a sharp light exploding in his eyes. Song Zhu nervously said, "What is it?" Qin Yu's lips curved up. "I've been discovered. It seems that your old ancestor's situation is already quite critical. I can't believe he's so cautious." Song Zhu screamed, "Hurry and leave. Hurry and leave." "There's no need to hurry." Qin Yu reached out a hand and pressed down on her shoulder. "Answer my question just now. Otherwise, the more you delay, the more dangerous it will be for me." "You bastard," Song Zhu cursed. "The old ancestor's life has reached its end. If he wants to continue living, he joins forces with the dark influences and attempts to transform into a dark life form. But this goes against the vast Yang rules. In particular, with the old ancestor's cultivation, he isn't allowed to walk this path. So, your old ancestor needs a substitute to temporarily transfer his strength into your bodies. When the vast Yang rules erase your consciousness, he can take back his strength and obtain a new life." Qin Yu completed the rest of his words. There was no need to ask any further. From Song Zhu's shocked expression, he knew that his guess was correct. This old ancestor Black Turtle's plans were quite good. Moreover, he actually managed to raise the Song Zhu siblings who could perfectly fuse with his strength. This wasn't an easy matter at all. Looking at it from another angle, the old ancestor Black Turtle had experimented countless times before finally obtaining the Song Zhu siblings. In other words, from the moment they were born, They were only the products of his plan. They were sacrifices that were destined to be abandoned. They were born into the schemes of others and were destined to be destroyed. Just how great of a sorrow was this? Qin Yu suddenly felt that the Zhangzhu sisters in front of him were very pitiful. Towards the old ancestor black turtle that he hadn't met yet, he instantly felt a deep hatred for him. There was no need to comfort them. First, there was no time, and Qin Yu didn't want to fight right now. Second, since Zhangzhu had escaped, she must have already learned of all of this. Her heart had already been hurt, so comforting them now would only be tearing at their scars. So, all Qin Yu could do was nod. I understand. Bear with it for now. I don't think this matter has reached the point of despair. Zhangzhu, believe me, don't give up until the last moment. The longer you persist, the more chances you have to survive. I have to go. Remember what I said. Qin Yu stood up and stepped back. His figure submerged into the darkness. With the sound of the door opening and closing, the surroundings fell deathly silent. Big sister, the startled youth finally couldn't help but ask, is this person my brother-in-law? The sour feelings in Zhangzhu's heart were instantly shattered by this form of address. Her pale face blushed red, and she cursed. Shut up! What nonsense are you talking about? Songhua had a suspicious expression. I've known since I was a child that you would blush whenever you were flustered. Moreover, you would subconsciously avert your eyes, not daring to meet anyone's gaze. That's right, it's your current appearance. It seems that I guessed right. Big sister, isn't brother-in-law very fierce? We were locked up here by the old ancestor, but he was actually able to find us. Seeing the light in the youth's eyes, Zhangzhu felt her heart ache. She couldn't bring herself to curse him. She thought for a moment and earnestly said, he is indeed a fierce person, but he really isn't your brother-in-law. Songhua, just because Qin Yu risked his life to come here doesn't mean he can save us. Big sister knows that you are afraid and that telling you this is cruel. But if the hope in your heart is dashed, I worry that you won't be able to withstand it. So let's not think too much about this, okay? Songhua's eyes darkened. Then he smiled. As long as I'm with Big Sister, I'm not afraid. Isn't it just death? In any case, people will die anyway. Zhangzhu pulled him into her arms and rubbed his head. Good boy. She looked towards the entrance. Had Qin Yu been discovered? She hoped that he could escape faster and not be caught by the old ancestor. Although reason clearly told her not to harbor any wild hopes, as she thought of Qin Yu's words, she still subconsciously bit her lips. Perhaps there really was a tiny bit of hope. My lord, you've come out. The guard in the dungeon welcomed Qin Yu with a smile. But before he could finish speaking, he froze. In the next moment, he was crushed to pieces by a terrifying strength. Qin Yu stepped forwards, and his figure instantly changed. He was the dungeon guard from just now. After doing this, he immediately revealed a horrified expression and fell to the ground with a plop sound. In the next moment, an icy voice sounded out in the darkness. Who entered the dungeon just now? Speak, Qin Yu said with a trembling voice. 8 Eyes. It was Lord 8 Eyes. Humph. The darkness howled away. Qin Yu looked up. He restrained the fear on his face and turned to leave. Outside the dungeon, there was utter chaos. Countless sea folk surrounded the area, blocking it so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. A sea folk general pointed a finger. Stop, who are you? Qin Yu's face was filled with fear. He waved his hands again and again. My lord, please spare me. Please spare me. I'm just a dungeon guard. I don't know anything. Several dungeon guards nodded. That's right. He is one of us. He accompanied Lord 8 Eyes inside. Humph. Right now, everyone is a suspect. Before the truth is revealed, capture this person first and interrogate him afterwards. Yes. Several thick sea folk rushed forwards and directly tied up Qin Yu. After sealing away his strength, they escorted him away. The vault guards shrunk their necks when they saw this scene, and they didn't dare to say another word. They were well aware that if there really was an accident in the dungeon, this companion of theirs would surely suffer calamity, and they wouldn't be able to escape either. In this situation, they couldn't even take care of themselves, so who would care about the life or death of others? You entered the dungeon, and something happened inside. You brat, You better pray that there aren't any major problems, otherwise you're dead. In the dungeon guard's residence, Qin Yu was thrown to the ground. The tallest of the escorting sea folk diabolically grinned. But what surprised them was that the shivering body on the ground suddenly stabilized. Qin Yu looked up at him and smiled. Is that so? After several breaths of time, one of the escorting sea folk pushed open the door. He turned around and melted into the flow of people, soon vanishing from sight. Chapter 13:10. The reason why the Scarlet Summit Strait was so named was likely related to the two sides of the underwater canyon. Not only did they look red, but they also contained a terrifyingly high temperature within. But what was strange was that all of the heat was sealed within the stone, not leaking out in the slightest. It was because of this that the seawater remained calm. Otherwise, it would have been boiling by now. The sea region was covered in ice and snow, but deep beneath the sea there were red flints. Cold and heat coexisted in this place. Qin Yu didn't have any suspicions before, but now that he knew of the black turtle old ancestor situation, he had a different discovery. The so-called cold and heat belonged to the two extremes of yin and yang, borrowing the power of yin and yang to slow down the loss of one's lifespan and extend one's life as much as possible. Qin Yu looked up for a long time. His eyes flashed. He found it. Since yin and yang circulated, there naturally had to be a place where they converged. If the black turtle old ancestor wanted to borrow strength to extend his life, it must be there. The Sangju siblings' crisis was all because of this old turtle. If he could kill him, then all problems would be solved. Of course, wanting to kill the black turtle old ancestor wouldn't be simple. Otherwise, the dragon saint would have already turned him to ashes and wouldn't have allowed him to sleep beside his bed. He didn't want to think about it anymore. He would first go and meet this black turtle old ancestor. If he could kill him, then he would. If he couldn't, then he could make other plans. For instance, how could he unravel the ritual? If he couldn't interrupt it and forcefully take away the Sangju siblings, they would immediately die. He turned and left. After avoiding Qin Yu's line of sight, a malevolent Ku Chung appeared. He soared into the skies, straight towards the place where yin and yang converged. Deep within the canyon, a group of towering palaces appeared in front of Qin Yu. It was clear that this was the residence of the black turtle old ancestor. Shwa, shwa. Just as he approached the edge of the palaces, several sea folk howled over and bowed. Lord Ku Chung, why have you come? Qin Yu flicked his sleeves. He said, Move aside. I have an important matter to discuss with the old ancestor. This matter involves the safety of the Scarlet Summit Strait. If you fail, you cannot afford to bear the consequences. The several sea folk paled. They hurriedly drew to the side. Lord Ku Chung, please. Umph. With an angry snort, Qin Yu flew straight in. His eyes swept around and locked onto the strongest aura here. His footsteps didn't stop. Soon, he appeared outside a strange temple. Half of it was pure white, and the other half was as black as ink. At this moment, the doors to the hall were tightly shut. On both sides of the hall, there were strange stone statues of giant sea beasts. Their eyes were wide open, causing one to subconsciously shiver in fear. Ku Chung, why are you here? Qin Yu bowed. Old ancestor, I discovered an important secret. I didn't dare to delay at all, so I hurried over immediately. After a moment of silence, the door quietly opened and the voice of the black turtle old ancestor came out. Come in. Yes. Qin Yu's figure flashed as he flew into the hall. His eyes swept around and immediately locked onto the figure sitting cross-legged between the yin-yang fish. His first impression was that he was short and skinny, and then he was old. The flesh on his face had completely shriveled, leaving only densely packed layers of coarse skin. His entire body was like a half-rotten piece of wood that would soon be reduced to ashes. As he thought, this black turtle old ancestor's condition was extremely poor. No wonder he didn't dare to leave this place for even a moment. Across from him, the black turtle old ancestor swept his eyes over Qin Yu. His dim yellow eyes shined with greed, leaving one with a fearful feeling. Speak, what is it? Yu took a deep breath and put on a nervous expression. Old ancestor, I discovered that Bom Mu is a traitor. He seems to have been bewitched by the Tsang Zhu and Tsang Hua siblings. I investigated and discovered that this matter is related to the Lost Garden. Tsang Zhu brought out something from inside. As he spoke, he took out something from his chest. The black turtle old ancestor looked up. Come, let me have a look. Yu sneered with heartache. No matter how many years you lived and how cunning you were, how could you not fall into my trap? As long as I could measure your pulse, would I be afraid that you wouldn't take the bait? Yes. Yu nodded. Then, he held a black object in his hands and quickly walked over. In truth, this object was very simple. It was just a shell he picked up on the side of the road. But it couldn't withstand Yu pouring in a bit of the strength of his pre-celestial spirit. It wasn't that he didn't want to waste it, but that the material of this shell was far too poor. With just a bit of strength, it was already covered in cracks. Luckily, even though the black turtle old ancestor was old and decrepit, his nose was still very useful. Hurry and give it to me. The black turtle old ancestor's face was filled with urgency. His wrinkled face was filled with excitement. Yu looked up and smiled. Okay. A fist punched out. Dong, caught off guard. The black turtle old ancestor wasn't able to avoid this punch. He was sent flying backwards, blood spraying out from his nose and mouth. Who are you? The black turtle old ancestor's face was filled with anger. With Yu's current strength, even a true Prometha saint would lose several teeth and spit out several mouthfuls of blood. Yu wanted to take advantage of his weakness to take his life. At this time, he didn't have the time to say anything. His feet moved like a shadow, and he punched out again. But with a loud explosion, Yu was sent flying backwards. He cursed inwardly. How tough. He saw a pitch-black tortoise shell covered in deep cracks, protecting the black turtle old ancestor. Even though it withstood Yu's all-out punch, it wasn't damaged at all. Instead, the shockwave that erupted caused Yu to feel excruciating pain and his bones crackled. It wasn't to the point where his bones broke or his tendons snapped, but even with Yu's powerful body of rules, he still felt unbearable pain. From this, it could be seen just how amazing the defense of this tortoise shell was. It seemed that killing the black turtle patriarch and taking drastic measures to solve the problem would not work. Yu faintly smiled. Black turtle, let's stop here for today. We will meet again in the future. He turned and left without any hesitation. The roars of the black turtle old ancestor echoed out from behind him. You come and go as you please. Where do you think this is? Bang! A wild strength instantly erupted, blocking out space. But Yu punched out, directly opening up a large hole. His figure flashed, and he flew out. Some sea folk heard the commotion and rushed over, but he casually smashed them to pieces and vanished without a trace. Bang! Darkness burst open. St. Thousand Nether's deep voice sounded out. Brother Turtle, what happened? The black turtle old ancestor roared. A true saint has broken into the Scarlet Summit Strait, and I have fallen into his trap. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood. It was bright red when it left his mouth, but as it fell to the ground, it turned pitch black and emitted a foul stench. At the same time, black lines appeared on the surface of the black turtle old ancestor's body. The smell he emitted also began to become unbearably foul, like a piece of pork belly that had been improperly stored in a hot summer day. The black turtle old ancestor's eyes became increasingly cold. Thousand Nether, we must move forward with the plan. I no longer have time to wait. St. Thousand Nether frowned. The transformation of a black turtle into a darkness creature was a difficult matter to begin with. If they recklessly sped up the process, problems might arise. Moreover, another true saint had broken into the Scarlet Summit Strait. Who was this person, and what was his goal? Brother Turtle, don't be impatient for the time being. What we should do now is find the person hiding in the shadows. Otherwise, if this person attacks at a critical moment, the consequences will be inconceivable. The black turtle old ancestor was silent. He acknowledged that what Thousand Nether said was correct, but he was well aware of his own situation. That punch from before had nearly scattered all of his remaining vitality. He couldn't wait any longer. Even if he knew that a true saint was coveting him from the shadows, he still had to take this risk. Thousand Nether, I really don't have time, the black turtle old ancestor quietly said. After suffering for so many years, I have finally completed all my preparations. I will absolutely not fail at the final moment. If anyone wants to kill me, I will personally kill them. Chapter 13:11. Sage Thousand Nether rubbed his eyebrows, feeling a headache coming on. He knew that there was a terrifying true saint-level enemy lurking in the dark, but he still insisted on speeding up the process of the transformation. Not to mention the possibility of accidents during the process. If the enemy attacked at the critical moment, he would be in great danger. After all, the process of transforming into a dark creature required Sage Thousand Nether's personal participation. He could not stay out of it. But if he refused, Sage Thousand Nether had seen the old turtle's ruthlessness with his own eyes. He would definitely turn against him. This was an unacceptable consequence for the dark world. After a few moments of silence, Sage Thousand Nether slowly said, "Brother Turtle, listen to me. I have no opinion on speeding up the process and completing the transformation as soon as possible. However, there's one thing you should be clear about. If you encounter any external interference during the transformation ceremony, it'll be very dangerous. We don't know who the true saint is, but he chose to attack at this moment. His purpose is nothing more than to stop Brother Turtle from completing the transformation. So, maybe we can beat him in his own game and use this as bait to make him attack and keep him here to avoid future trouble." Patriarch Black Turtle's eyes shot out from the turtle shell. "Nether, what are you trying to say? Don't keep us guessing now," the Thousand Nether Saints said in a deep voice. "I can invite the other true sages of the dark world to descend and join forces to set up an inescapable trap. However, Brother Turtle should also know that the true sages of the dark world cannot act as they please. Therefore, I need a sufficient reason to move the other true sages." As he said this, a glint flashed across his eyes. Patriarch Black Turtle was dying of old age. Although there were other reasons, he had lived for many years and was cautious, cunning, and ruthless. It was not easy to plot against him. Of course, more importantly, Sage Thousand Nether vaguely sensed an aura in the air that had not completely dissipated. The turtle shell fell silent, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. Sage Thousand Nether's expression was calm. Everything he said was the truth. Although there were hidden intentions, it was still an open plot. Even if Patriarch Black Turtle knew this, he had no reason to refuse if he wanted to live. Was there anything more important than life and death in this world? For some people, there might be, but Patriarch Black Turtle was not one of them. Primordial Spirit. Patriarch Black Turtle's tone was calm. What you sensed is the power of the Primordial Spirit. The Thousand Nether Saint took a deep breath and asked anxiously, "How can Brother Turtle be sure?" The existence of innate spirits was not a secret, but this kind of legendary creature had long since gone extinct in the world, and no one had ever seen it before. There was a hint of mockery on the wizened face of the Black Turtle Patriarch. Sure enough, the dark world has long suspected it. The Thousand Nether Saint did not deny this. Many people have speculated as to why the Lost Garden has existed until now, and the world of darkness is no exception. The increase in strength of that junior from the Peach Blossom Garden, as well as the battle prowess he displayed, is truly astonishing. But at most, we can only suspect it. No one has any concrete evidence. So, back to the original question, how can Brother Turtle be so sure that that is the power of the innate spirit? The Shingue Patriarch was silent for a while and said, "The reason is simple. I was born in the Lost Realm. The reason why I have the strength I have today is because I absorbed a trace of the power of the primordial spirit. The East Sea was ruled by a true divine, and the Scarlet Summit Strait was independent. Those in the divine Tao circle who were qualified to know about this all sighed in amazement. After all, The power of a true divine was so terrifying that he could compete with someone who was not in the true divine realm. This alone was enough to make him famous in vast Yang. So the Xiangui patriarch was still very famous in the divine Tao circle. Countless people had speculated about his origins. Some said that the Xiangui patriarch was an ancient creature that had lived to this day, while others said that he was a mutation of heaven and earth by chance. But no one had ever thought that the Xiangui patriarch had come from the Lost Garden. Impossible. The Thousand Nether Saint blurted out. Brother Turtle, why do you have to be so perfunctory? Everyone knows that the Lost Garden is different from the vast Yang rules. It is impossible for the creatures inside to leave, let alone live safely to this day, like Brother Turtle. The Xiangui patriarch glanced at him. If I wanted to be perfunctory, I would not have used such an obviously wrong excuse. The difference in the rules you speak of does exist, and it does affect me. After a pause, he continued, Thousand Nether, haven't you always wanted to know why my lifespan was exhausted with my cultivation and tortoise body? This is the price I had to pay to escape from the Lost Garden and enter the vast Yang world. As for how I was able to do this, it is likely related to the battle of the divine Tao calamity. The changes that occurred in the vast Yang world gave me a chance. That is all I can say. You can choose not to believe me, but in today's situation, I have no reason to lie to you. The one who attacked me was the Peach Garden's Chinyu. The Thousand Nether Saint's eyes were cloudy and uncertain. Although he still had many doubts, his intuition told him that the Xiangui patriarch wasn't lying. As soon as he thought of this, his heart began to race. Even with his solemn permitha, true saint cultivation, he still couldn't help but feel his throat go dry. The Peach Garden's Chinyu had appeared out of nowhere, and in a single leap he had reached the peak of vast Yang. Then, he joined forces with the Garden Master to kill the Netherworld Saint. This was enough to establish his illustrious reputation. The Saint Tao circle seemed calm, but countless eyes gathered on Chinyu, cautious and blazing hot. Cautious because of the Netherworld Saint's death. As for blazing hot, he was just a mere junior, yet in such a short period of time he had the terrifying strength to cut down a true saint. Who didn't want to know the secret behind this? And now, the Thousand Nether Saint had become one of the first to know the truth. A pre-celestial spirit, the strength of a pre-celestial spirit. Although he couldn't figure out how you could absorb it with his mere strength, this wasn't the important point right now. The important point was that as long as he could suppress him, there was a chance that this strength could be taken away. And now, he was in the Scarlet Summit Strait. If it could be said that in the past, the Thousand Nether Saints still had some small plans hidden in his heart. But now, it was like a hurricane had passed through, instantly sweeping away everything. At this moment, there was only one thought in his mind. Draw out Chinyu and suppress him. I will invite the other two darkness true saints to come to the Scarlet Summit Strait. I hope that everything Brother Turtle said is true. The darkness gradually dispersed. The Thousand Nether Saint had already left. Although these last words seemed calm, they were actually a hidden threat. Within the tortoise shell, the Xiangui patriarch's mocking expression became even heavier. These rats of the darkness world really did have an incomparably hateful style. They clearly wanted to take advantage of others, but they weren't willing to take on too many risks. But in this world, there was no such thing as a gust of wind. If you wanted more, you had to pay a corresponding price. After being punched and angered, the Xiangui patriarch guessed Chinyu's identity. But he didn't say much. He only asked for the transformation to be completed faster, with the goal of luring the Thousand Nether Saint to take the initiative to mention this matter. Otherwise, did he really think that he didn't notice the aura of the pre-celestial spirit in the air? Couldn't he erase it in advance? What a joke. It was supposed to be a very simple invitation, but the Thousand Nether Saint didn't notice it. It wasn't that he was stupid, but that he was blinded by the heat and greed in his heart. Therefore, greed was the greatest original sin in this world. If the Xiangui patriarch hadn't insisted on escaping from the Lost Garden, he wouldn't have ended up in this state of decay and suffering for countless years. Now, it was time for him to pay the price for his greed. He only hoped that the three darkness true saints today would be of sufficient weight to deal with this calamity on his behalf. The Xiangui patriarch's eyes were dim. Did they really think that anyone was qualified to take the power of the pre-celestial spirit? Since he had obtained it, this was a great momentum. And now, the Peach Gardens Qin Yu had already become a great momentum. Chapter 13:12. Of course, he couldn't use the identity of Ku Chung anymore, but Qin Yu didn't care. There were tens of thousands of sea races in the Scarlet Peak Strait. It was easy for him to change his identity. However, if there was no accident, the Black Turtle Old Ancestor and Thousand Nether Saint had probably guessed his true identity. This was to be expected. Qin Yu used the power of the pre-celestial spirit as bait, so he would inevitably be suspected. The saint-killing battle outside the Lost Garden had just ended. Although Qin Yu would never admit it without concrete evidence, he couldn't treat a group of saints as fools. Moreover, there was the Black Turtle Old Ancestor. At first glance, Qin Yu felt the power of the pre-celestial spirit. He also confirmed what Song Zhu had said before. The Black Turtle Old Ancestor came from the Lost Garden and knew about the existence of the pre-celestial spirit. But it didn't matter. So what if they knew who he was? At this time, would he be afraid that they would go to the Peach Garden to find trouble? Perhaps the Black Turtle Old Ancestor and Thousand Nether Saint were even more excited about how to set up a trap to lure him out and then seize the power of the pre-celestial spirit. Qin Yu's current appearance was that of an ordinary sea folk. He turned to look at the red stone wall, at the palaces where old ancestor Black Turtle lived, and coldly sneered. He opened his hand, and a drop of blood was wrapped in an invisible force, suspended between his fingers. This drop of blood came from the Black Turtle Old Ancestor. It was the harvest from the previous punch. Killing the Black Turtle Old Ancestor was indeed the best way to save people. But Dragon Saint had been unable to kill the Black Turtle Old Ancestor for so many years, so Qin Yu naturally had to prepare a backup plan. If he couldn't kill him, then he could only think of a way to use the darkness transformation ritual. Qin Yu comprehended light and darkness. In terms of the great Tao of darkness, although he couldn't compare with a true saint, he could at least see some clues. Thus, when he was in the dungeon, Qin Yu not only saw that the Black Turtle Old Ancestor wanted to use the Hidden Pearl and the Song Hua siblings as substitutes to prolong his life, but there were also many other things. It was just that he didn't have absolute confidence at the time and needed to verify it again. Now it was about time. A plan gradually formed in Qin Yu's mind. He carefully deliberated it several times. Of course, there were some risks, but to be honest, it wasn't too high. With the power of the pre-celestial spirit in his body, even if there was an accident, he could still escape. On the contrary, if he succeeded, the title of Saint Slaughtering Demon would probably be used by him. However, if he wanted to complete the plan, this drop of blood wasn't enough. He needed to prepare more things. For example, the Thousand Nether Saint was probably busy looking for helpers from the Dark World at the moment. The plan was not ready yet, so he had to be slightly interrupted. Moreover, he needed to participate in the following scenes. Qin Yu did not know much about the Dark World. He had only heard a little about it from the Yardmaster. This was a group of mysterious fellows who claimed to be the liberators who wandered beyond the light and were not bound by the will of Vast Yang. The last point was definitely a boast. He was not bound by the Vast Yang will. So why don't you go against the heavens and see? Do you believe that a bolt of lightning will strike you into pieces? However, there was one thing that was beyond doubt. The underworld was a very powerful organization, and there were at least 3 true sages in charge. He did not know how many sage Thousand Nether would be able to pull over. If there were too many, it would be difficult to operate. He might even have to ask the Dragon Sage to share the burden. He would take it one step at a time. There was no time to think too much. Qin Yu's eyes flashed, and he turned and disappeared. The aura of darkness was so thick that it was easy for Qin Yu to find the Thousand Nether Saint, especially when he did not restrain his power. The security was so tight that it would not be an exaggeration to say that not even a fly could fly in. After the attack on the Black Turtle Patriarch, the Thousand Nether Saint had learned his lesson and strictly ordered that no one was allowed to enter without his permission. Not only that, but the power of darkness was like thick ink, covering the entire building without leaving a single gap. It was easy to kill a guard, but it was almost impossible to sneak through the defense of a true divine without making a sound. Even Qin Yu cannot do it. However, he soon found another opportunity. The Thousand Nether Saint was indeed trying to summon other true sages from the dark world. Since that was the case, the corner of Qin Yu's mouth curled up. After the guard had finished his rotation, he stood still and lowered his head slightly, closing his eyes. The interior of the building was very spacious, and there was a pool built on the ground. The Thousand Nether Saint stood in the air and swept his sleeves across the surface of the pool. The next moment, darkness suddenly surged out, instantly filling every corner of the pool. The water surface suddenly surged, giving off a violent aura, like a raging sea in a storm. Then, a huge face appeared in the pool. Because of the undulating waves, it looked especially distorted, but the pair of eyes seemed to have crossed the barriers of space and directly descended here. Thousand Nether, why did you summon me? A low voice was emitted through the turbulence of the water, constantly echoing inside the hall. The Thousand Nether Saint said in a low voice, 100 Paths, I invite you to come to the Scarlet Peak Strait today and complete the Black Turtle Patriarch's Darkness Transformation task with me. The face's voice was cold, not interested, after saying that it was about to disconnect. The Thousand Nether Saints seemed to be prepared and said unhurriedly, this matter involves the Peach Garden's Qin Yu. The face's dissipating momentum stopped, and it was silent for a moment. Qin Yu, the Black Turtle Patriarch, personally guaranteed that our previous speculation is true. Speaking up to this point, the Thousand Nether Saints suddenly frowned. At this moment, the pool water was surging even more violently, as if another huge creature was about to force its way in. Then, the Thousand Nether Saint felt a second vast and unparalleled dark aura. His first thought was that his summon to the 100 Paths Saint had actually been sensed by another darkness true sage. To be sensed at the same time meant that this person was nearby. With such a close distance between the two darkness true sages, of course, they knew each other. They might even be sitting together now. Therefore, even though this aura was unfamiliar, in the eyes of the Thousand Nether Saint, it was obvious that he was a friend of the 100 Paths Saint. The 100 Paths Saint glanced at the Thousand Nether Saint's calm expression and assumed that besides him, the Thousand Nether Saint had also summoned another darkness true sage. To summon the consciousness of two true sages at the same time, there must be something big going on. Thinking of the first half of the sentence, the 100 Paths Saint took a deep breath. Thousand Nether, you haven't finished what you said just now. Indeed, the two of them knew each other, and their relationship was very close. Otherwise, they would not have so easily informed others of such a big matter. It was true. The Thousand Nether Saint could not help but feel worried. The 100 Paths Saint was on good terms with the other darkness true sage. If the two of them came to the Crimson Summit Strait, he would not be able to gain any advantage when the benefits were divided. But now that things had come to this, it was too late for him to go back on his words. That's right. Just as you think, the 100 Paths Saint, Qin Yu has indeed obtained the power of the primordial spirit. The old ancestor Black Turtle came from the Lost Garden. This matter is very credible. So today, I summon the two of you to come to the Crimson Summit Strait and use the old ancestor Black Turtle's darkness transformation ceremony as bait to suppress Qin Yu together and obtain the power of the primordial spirit. After a slight pause, the Thousand Nether Saint continued. The gains will be divided equally between you and me. If the two of you agree, then swear by darkness. Otherwise, I can only invite other true sages to come. Hearing this, Qin Yu suddenly changed his mind. He realized that regardless of whether it was Thousand Nether or 100 Paths, their names were actually quite compatible. In short, These two darkness true sages did not suspect his identity. It was simply perfect. Using the darkness summoning ceremony to plot against the Thousand Nether Saint was Qin Yu's original plan. Now that he thought about it, it was too petty. If he wanted to play, then he would play it big. For example, he could pretend to be a darkness true sage. Then, the situation would definitely be spectacular. All right, Qin Yu said in a low voice. The 100 Paths sage frowned slightly. He felt that this unfamiliar true sage had agreed too easily. There was something strange about it. However, Thousand Nether's suggestion was very normal, and he had no objections. Sure, I will rush over as soon as possible. The darkness in the pool quickly dissipated and the two giant faces disappeared. The Thousand Nether Saint let out a breath and smiled. Qin Yu, if the three darkness true sages join forces, it will be an inescapable trap. Even if you have the power of the primordial spirit, you will not be able to escape this time. What if he leaves early? The Thousand Nether Saint's expression changed slightly, and his eyes were filled with uncertainty. He was now sure that Qin Yu had mastered some kind of extremely powerful illusion technique. Even the old ancestor Black Turtle was tricked. If Qin Yu sensed that something was wrong and left the Crimson Summit straight, wouldn't all his arrangements be for naught? Not only that, he had also summoned two darkness true sages. He did not know about the unfamiliar one, but 100 Paths was not easy to deal with. No, he had to find a way to confirm that Qin Yu was still in the Crimson Summit Strait and would not leave early. He had miscalculated. He had been so shocked by the news of the primordial spirit that he had forgotten about this point in his anxiety. Although the chances of Qin Yu leaving were not high, the Thousand Nether Saint could not take the risk. There was only one chance, and he had to do it perfectly. What should he do? The old ancestor Black Turtle sneered. Qin Yu will never leave the Crimson Summit Strait. The Thousand Nether Saint relaxed a little but still frowned. Why is Brother Turtle so confident? The old ancestor Black Turtle hid in the turtle shell and said coldly, because he wants to save someone. Hidden Pearl? The Thousand Nether Saint's eyes lit up. The old ancestor Black Turtle said, That's right. The person Hidden Pearl in the Lost Garden would rather follow me back to the East Sea to save is Qin Yu. That's why he is here now. The ceremony has already begun. Unless I die or interrupt the ceremony, Songzhu and Songhua will immediately die. Since Qin Yu's sneak attack wasn't able to kill me, he can only take the second path. The Thousand Nether Saint frowned. After speaking for so long, it was all because of a woman. This was too unreliable. Even if Qin Yu had done something with Hidden Pearl in the Lost Garden and was willing to take risks for her, the assassination attempt had failed. But even the assassination had failed. With the intelligence Qin Yu displayed during the Saint Slaughter battle outside the Lost Garden, he could definitely guess that they already knew his true identity. Spreading his thoughts further, it was highly likely that Qin Yu had determined old ancestor Black Turtle's identity through Hidden Pearl. In other words, Qin Yu likely already knew that they knew about the primordial spirit. It was hard to say, but this was the truth. In this situation, unless Qin Yu was an idiot, there was no way he would continue to stay in the Crimson Summit Strait. The more he thought about it, the colder his heart became. The Thousand Nether Saint felt that his actions of summoning two darkness true saints with such great fanfare had been extremely stupid. Perhaps Qin Yu had already returned to the Peach Garden by now. After all, she was just a mere woman. Compared to his own safety, there was no importance at all. Chapter 13:13. Old ancestor Black Turtle actually believed that Qin Yu was still in Crimson Peak Strait and would never choose to leave. It was ridiculous. Sensing Netherworld Saint's worry and annoyance, a trace of mockery flashed in the eyes of the Black Turtle Patriarch. Some people always like to judge others by their own standards, but they never understood that some people in this world were different. Qin Yu was in Crimson Peak Strait. Old ancestor Black Turtle suddenly felt a little worried. He hoped that the other true sages of the Dark World would not be as stupid as Qin Yu. Otherwise, even if there were 3 of them, they might not be able to help him. Of course, Qin Yu was still here. Since he had chosen to save people, it was not his style to give up halfway. And strictly speaking, old ancestor Black Turtle and Saint Qian Yu were his enemies. He had not forgotten what happened outside the Lost Garden, saving people and taking revenge at the same time. However, everything was beautiful in his imagination, but he needed to be careful in his actions. Otherwise, not to mention saving people and taking revenge, it would be good enough if he was not killed. For example, there was one thing that Qin Yu felt uneasy about. Why did Qin Yu and Bai Yu, the two dark true sages, not see through his identity? In other words, it was so easy for him to impersonate them. This matter did not seem reliable. Was it a trap for him? It did not seem like it. With this doubt, Qin Yu activated the scale that Long Sheng gave him. After a burst of noise, Long Sheng's voice sounded in his mind. Is everything going well, Mr. Ninth? Although he kept telling himself that he must be calm, Qin Yu had been in Crimson Peak Strait for so long, and there was no movement at all. Long Sheng's curiosity was about to explode. However, it was enough for Qin Yu to catch it. He smiled and said, "Something unexpected happened, so there are some things I don't understand. I want to ask Lord Long Sheng." Ahem. Long Sheng coughed lightly. "Mr. Ninth, please speak." Qin Yu's eyes flashed. "Lord Long Sheng, do you know anything about the Dark World?" "Dark transformation." Long Sheng blurted out, his voice solemn. "Did Mr. Ninth meet a cultivator of the Dark World in Crimson Peak Strait?" Qin Yu's heart stirred. It seemed that the dragon saint knew a lot about the Dark World. His mind quickly turned, and he didn't hide anything. "Yes, it's the Dark World's Thousand Nether Saint. He is now in the Crimson Summit Strait, and he wants to help the Black Turtle old ancestor complete the darkness transformation." Long Sheng was silent for a few breaths, then said with slight surprise, "That shouldn't be the case. Although I can't see through that black tortoise's strength, its bloodline level isn't low, and it is also a peerless tortoise powerhouse known for its long lifespan. Its lifespan should be extremely long, so why did it choose to transform into darkness? Could it be that the Dark World is using this as a lure to help him break through to the true divine level? Qin Yu knew the answer, but he wouldn't explain it. Otherwise, wouldn't that be telling Dragon Sage about the pre-celestial spirit? Although this was no longer a secret that no one knew about, and there were many people who doubted it, as long as Qin Yu didn't personally admit it, there was still some concealment. Don't underestimate this concealment. It was enough to help Qin Yu avoid a great deal of trouble. Cough. Lord Dragon Sage, what I want to know is, are the true sages of the Dark World not familiar with each other? And according to what I know now, the number of true sages in the Dark World seems to be far more than what the rumors say. Although he was confused before, Qin Yu quickly guessed that the key reason why he hadn't been exposed for pretending to be a darkness true sage was that the Thousand Nether Sage had already been prepared to summon 2 darkness true sages from the Dark World to descend upon the Crimson Peak Strait. He just happened to be there. After that, it was obviously a drama where you thought I knew you, and I thought you knew me, but in the end, neither of us knew each other. Let's not delve into this for now. The Thousand Nether Sage had casually decided to summon 2 darkness true sages. This clearly showed that the number of true sages in the Dark World was definitely not a small number. This was a little shocking. It should be known that in the entire Vasyong world, there were only so many true sages who could be counted with their names. Moreover, most of them were old monsters who had lived for countless years, such as the Yardmaster, who had already experienced 3 divine catastrophes. The latest newly advanced half-sage was Renichi Shishan, who had been killed by Qin Yu. Not to mention true sages, there were very few of them. The world of darkness was said to be a place where light could not reach. In reality, it was just a dark corner of the Haoyang world. For there to be so many true sages in such a small place, it was obvious that there was a problem here. Long Sheng seemed to know something. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "With Miss Nine's cultivation, you are indeed qualified to know some things. As for why the Dark World exists, to be honest, even the Sage Dao Circle has not been able to ascertain it. However, the rulers obviously know something. Therefore, the Dark World and us are probably in a state of not interfering with each other. Moreover, The Dark World's true sages have to pay a huge price to appear in the vast Yang world. Therefore, unless it is absolutely necessary, they rarely appear in the world, nor do they cause trouble everywhere. In the history of the vast Yang world, they are more like some unimportant shadows. But shadows have always existed. In other words, the Dark World has existed since a very long time ago. As for how long it has been, I'm afraid that even your old peach seller might not be able to tell. In short, the Dark World is very mysterious. Until now, no one has been able to unveil its veil. As for what you said about the familiarity between the dark true sages, Qin Yu said in a low voice, "This is very important to me. Lord Long Sheng, please tell me the truth." Long Sheng smiled bitterly. "Actually, there's nothing to hide. The main thing is that I don't understand. The number of true sages in the Dark World seems to be constantly changing. To put it simply, perhaps one day, a completely unfamiliar dark true sage will suddenly appear. After being active for a period of time, he will disappear without a trace, never to appear again. Then, another unfamiliar dark true sage will appear, and the process will repeat. Therefore, you ask me if there's a problem of not being familiar with each other between the darkness true sages. I think it's possible because the true sages in the Dark World are constantly changing. No one knows where the darkness true sages that appear and disappear go to. This is also an unsolvable secret." Qin Yu's heart trembled. Through his conversation with Long Sheng, he realized that he seemed to have underestimated the background of the Dark World. Not to mention other things, for the rulers to know about it and not deal with it. This point alone was shocking enough. Not to mention, there were all sorts of mysterious and inconceivable things inside. The number of true sages actually changed. However, this also explained why Qin Yu and Bai Su, the two true sages, did not expose Qin Yu's identity previously. It turned out that in the Dark World, true sages might not have met each other before. They might even be complete strangers. In other words, as long as one was careful and did some preparation, it was possible to play the role of a dark true sage. "Thank you, Lord Long Sheng, for telling me. I understand." Long Sheng said, "Mr. Ninth, the Dark World is not to be trifled with. If it is not necessary, it is best not to tangle with them." Qin Yu raised his hand and rubbed his eyebrows. After knowing these things about the Dark World, if he had a choice, he really did not want to provoke them. But the key was that the dark transformation ritual on the Zhangzhu siblings had already begun. Unless he let it go, he would not be able to avoid it. Or perhaps he could pay a price to change Qin Yu's mind and save the Zhangzhu siblings' lives. Lord Long Sheng seems to know about the dark transformation ritual. I won't hide it from you. I entered the Scarlet Peak straight to save someone, so it involves... There was no need to say it too clearly. Long Sheng was a smart person. He immediately smiled bitterly. "Impossible. Mr. Ninth, you better give up on this idea." Over the countless years, the Dark World will take the initiative to contact cultivators who meet the requirements and help them complete the dark transformation ritual to become creatures of the Dark World. I'm not clear about the specific requirements, but every cultivator who is invited must be at the top level of the vast Yang world, such as a Permitha true sage or an existence like the Black Turtle Old Ancestor. After the dark transformation ritual is completed, they will obtain a new life, and their hidden dangers will be eliminated, becoming one of the permanent dark true sages. Long Sheng paused for a moment. As I said before, the number of true sages in the Dark World is constantly changing. They often appear for a brief moment before disappearing without a trace. In addition, there are also some dark true sages that can remain active in the vast Yang world for a long time. For instance, the Thousand Nether true sage you mentioned. And he was also a true sage of the vast Yang world that successfully transformed 10,000 years ago. So, you should understand, to the Dark World, every successful dark transformation ritual is incomparably precious. Once it is involved, no one could change it. The Dark World is like the shadow of the vast Yang world. It rarely interferes in the affairs of the world, and the only times it is fought was because of the dark transformation ritual. So, Mr. Ninth does not need to have any expectations for this. Permanent dark true sage. After understanding this concept, Chinyu understood that what he wanted to do was impossible. As he thought, opening a new path was extremely difficult. If he had to face them head-on, he would have to face them head-on. There was no other way. As for offending people, Chinyu bitterly smiled. With his current cultivation, if he was careful, he shouldn't be killed, right? Thank you, Lord Longsheng. After ending the conversation, Chinyu took a deep breath and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. He couldn't help but feel uneasy. Although Longsheng had said that he could speak at any time if there was a need, he could only take it as it wasn't true. Would Longsheng, who knew the ins and outs of the dark world, casually make enemies with Chinyu? Don't be naive. However, these were only Longsheng's side of the story. Although Chinyu felt that the possibility of him being deceived was not high, he didn't choose to believe it completely. After a slight hesitation, Chinyu flipped his hand and took out a peach blossom. This item was given to him by the yardmaster, and its function was similar to the dragon scale. He inserted his divine consciousness into it. This time, the noise was louder and lasted longer. It was probably related to the distance that he had traveled. Chapter 13-14. Finally, the voice of the Yardmaster came from the other side. It's me. What's the matter? Her tone was very calm, without any abnormality. But for some reason, Chinyu sensed a trace of weakness in it. Without asking immediately, he asked hesitantly, Master, how's your recovery? It's no big deal. The Yardmaster said lightly. It's a great loss to communicate across a small world over such a long distance. So tell me what's the matter. Chinyu relaxed a little. If she still had the mood to argue, it wouldn't be serious. Master, I have something to ask. Immediately, he briefly told her about the Dark World and the Scarlet Summit Strait. After listening to him, the Yard Master fell silent. The Dark World. She seemed to be organizing her words. Chinyu, your best choice now is to give up on saving people. Chinyu, the Yard Master's attitude was more straightforward, and her meaning was clearer. The Dark World was not to be trifled with, and he should avoid conflict as much as possible. Taking a deep breath, Chinyu said, Master, Songzhu saved me. If not for her, I would have died in the Lost Garden, and I wouldn't be here today. The Yard Master's voice was calm. Have you decided? Yes, the Yard Master said. Then what are you still hesitating for? This seems to make a lot of sense. No, I was just thinking of confirming it with you again. What Longsheng said is basically correct. The Dark World values Transformers very much. If you ruin this, they won't let you go easily. Be mentally prepared in advance. At the end of the conversation, Chinyu smiled bitterly. From a Yardmaster's point of view, things seemed to be more serious than he had imagined. One couldn't lie to oneself, so Chinyu had to admit that at this moment, he did have the idea of escaping. He wouldn't provoke the Dark World, and he could also protect himself. No. If the Dark World had really confirmed the matter regarding the primordial spirit through the Black Turtle ancestor, Chinyu felt that it would be very difficult for him to escape unscathed. Strictly speaking, Chinyu had miscalculated. If he had known that the Dark World was so tricky, he would have thought of another way instead of using the power of the primordial spirit as bait. After taking a deep breath and exhaling, Chinyu's expression became calm again. There was no such thing as regret in the world of adults because it was meaningless and would make people fall into a depressed state. Moreover, Chinyu couldn't just turn around and abandon Songzhu and her brother. Since that was the case, there was no need to think about these things and add to his worries. Since he had decided to disguise himself as a darkness true divine descending upon the Crimson Peak Strait, he had to adjust his plans accordingly. Furthermore, he had to speed up the process. He had to finish everything before True Sage by 2 arrived. Chinyu turned and walked away. Before long, his figure appeared outside a group of buildings. He didn't know who the master of this place was, nor did he care. But there was one thing he was sure of, and that was that he was related to the Black Turtle Patriarch by blood. If you want to blame someone, blame that ancestor of yours." As he muttered, he entered. Not long after, a furious roar came from within. "Master is dead! Master is dead!" Countless members of the sea race soared into the sky. Their master had been silently killed, and none of them could escape the blame. At this moment, their eyes were all scarlet red, as if they were vicious beasts that were about to devour someone. But unfortunately, no matter how hard they stared, they couldn't find any clues. Because at this time, Chin had already left. He had arrived at the second residence he had chosen. He changed his face and easily entered. With the guidance of a drop of blood from the black turtle great ancestor, it was very easy to find the master. Bang! He pushed open the door and entered. The middle-aged sea folk frowned. He put down the disheveled maid in his arms and said, "You bastard! Who let you in?" "Sorry, I'll be leaving soon." Chinyu lifted a hand and pointed out a finger. With a muffled sound, a red and white substance sprayed out. With a large hole in the forehead of the middle-aged sea folk, his corpse fell to the ground. "Ah!" The maid's screams caused a second commotion. Chinyu turned and left. In the following half a day, murders occurred one after another in the Scarlet Summit Strait, all of them close descendants of the Black Turtle Patriarch. For a time, everyone was in a state of panic and fear. When he killed the 13th person, Chinyu finally left behind a message. Hand over the Tsang Zhu and Tsang Hua siblings. Otherwise, he would slaughter all the descendants of the Black Turtle bloodline. There was no response, so the killing continued. The descendants of the Black Turtle that had enjoyed a high and lofty status were now completely frightened out of their wits. They cried out as they rushed outside the Black Turtle Palace, begging the old ancestor to kill the murderer and protect them from harm. For a time, the sounds of crying shook the heavens. Fear, they were truly afraid. In fact, when Shin Yu killed the third person, the descendants of the Black Turtle realized that something was wrong and responded one after another. At the beginning, they were not afraid. Instead, they grinned and looked forward to the murderer delivering himself to their door. This was the confidence that the noble and powerful descendants of the Black Turtle should have. But the development of events soon shattered their confidence, because even if they were fully prepared, no one could stop the arrival of the slaughter. Even now, they did not know who the murderer was. It was not until Chin Yu killed the 13th person and left behind a message that the terrified descendants of the Black Turtle suddenly realized that the murderer was the enemy of the old ancestor. An existence that dared to be the enemy of the old ancestor. Killing them was as easy as taking something from his pocket, like slaughtering chickens or dogs. Of course, the Black Turtle Patriarch knew who the murderer was, but no matter how loud the cries outside shook the heavens, there was not the slightest change in his expression. Across from him, the corners of St. Thousand Nether's mouth curled up, and there was even a hint of excitement in his smile. Chin Yu was really still in the Scarlet Summit Strait. Good, this was simply too good. Although it seemed that the Black Turtle Patriarch did not care about the deaths and injuries of these juniors, it was still better to restrain himself at this time and not be too obvious. With a light cough, St. Thousand Nether said, "Brother Turtle, do you want to let these juniors temporarily hide here to take refuge? Otherwise, Chin Yu will be flustered and exasperated, and I fear he will start a massacre again." The Black Turtle Patriarch said, "If he wants to kill, then let him kill. I don't care about the life or death of some good-for-nothing juniors." This was the truth. He did not care about these bloodline descendants at all. Moreover, after they were transformed into dark creatures, the bloodline connection between them would completely cease to exist. Since that was the case, even if these descendants were killed by Chin Yu, he would not even blink. But now, the Black Turtle Patriarch still frowned, his eyes filled with surprise. What he could not figure out was why Chin Yu would do this. Was it really, as he said, that he wanted to use this stupid action to force him to release the Hidden Pearl siblings? Ridiculous. Hidden Pearl and Hidden Flower were involved in the transformation of darkness, and this was his only chance to continue living. Let alone these bloodline descendants. Even if Chin Yu slaughtered the entire Scarlet Summit Strait, the Black Turtle Patriarch would not even blink. With Chin Yu's intelligence, how could he not understand this? Or could it be that because he had suddenly obtained a formidable strength, his heart had inflated, causing this junior to lose all reason and become impulsive and irritable? Because he had failed to assassinate Chinyu and couldn't find any other way to save Hidden Pearl and Hidden Flower? Did he lose his mind and start a massacre? If this was really the case, then it was truly disappointing. The inheritor of the pre-celestial spirit strength was actually such an idiot. Chapter 13:15. The 25th. Looking at the corpse in front of him, Chinyu turned and walked away. His lips curved up in a sneer. I think the black turtle old ancestor must be cursing me for being an idiot right now. The stone pagoda's calm voice echoed out. How can grass understand a bird? Master's exquisite arrangements are not something they can understand. Stone pagoda, you've changed. In the past, you wouldn't have done this or a flattery so openly. Chinyu jokingly scolded. The stone pagoda was silent for a moment. Because the one who flattered you so openly is no longer here. I was worried that Master wouldn't be used to it, so I made a change. Chinyu stepped forwards. His entire figure and appearance instantly changed. In the blink of an eye, he was a completely unfamiliar sea folk. There is indeed a problem with the shadow of the abyss, but I believe we will meet again. So, you just need to be yourself. Don't think about being an all-rounder. Yes, Master. The stone pagoda respectfully said, you have already killed 25 sea folk. You still need to kill 11 more to complete the task. But the black turtle descendants that meet the requirements are mostly gathered outside the black turtle old ancestor's palace. Should we go over? Chinyu shook his head. No need. If my guess is correct, these people will soon be driven back. We just need to wait. He looked up at the red stone wall and the palaces that stretched out into the distance. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. I'm actually looking forward to when Thousand Nether will appear. With that old turtle's cautious personality, he will definitely send him to probe me. And St. Thousand Nether probably wants to use this opportunity to confirm that I am still in the Scarlet Summit Strait. The stone pagoda said, everything is within Master's grasp. Here we go again. Let's not talk about anything else, but your flattery skills are a bit lacking compared to the shadow of the abyss. Chinyu looked down at his own shadow. In truth, he also wanted to know just what had happened to the old turtle. Was this a backup plan of the abyss? Well, if this was the case, then this fellow had likely been schemed against from the very start. Thinking about it, it was also quite sad. If this was really the case, then the abyss will have taken such a great deal of trouble to enter the vast Yang world. Chinyu thought of Teacher Liao. This woman's true identity was still a mystery. Why did she enter the abyss? He shook his head and suppressed these thoughts. He didn't want to think about it for now. His intuition told him that they would meet again in the future. Then, he would wait until they met to find out what had happened. 6636. It wasn't just because it sounded easy to say. In fact, the number itself contained a certain pattern. There were still 11 more. If he wanted to achieve the best results, he couldn't miss any of them. He had to hurry up. There were still a lot of things to do. Outside the palace complex, the descendants of the Black Tortoise, who were crying in fear and begging for the ancestors' protection, all looked desperate after hearing the order. What do you mean by returning home? You have been killed like this. Ancestor, your words are not convincing at all. It's clear that you don't want to get involved. In fact, if you think about it more darkly, you want to chase all of us back so that we can be killed. Why? Why was that? Ancestor, please open your eyes wide and look clearly. We are all your bloodline descendants. He was roaring in his heart, and his eyes were filled with dissatisfaction. However, this clearly did not affect the development of the situation at all. The will of the Black Turtle Patriarch was their destiny that they could not defy. The ancestor has abandoned us, but we can't just accept our fate like this. Yes, if we join forces, the villains may not dare to come again. Let's do it this way. Gather the experts of the sect together. It's not so easy to kill us. The descendants of the Black Tortoise growled with red eyes. Chinyu stood in the crowd, watching this group of descendants of the Black Tortoise, who were like trapped beasts, roaring and forming a group to leave. He turned and glanced in the direction of the palace. Although he had already guessed the next move of the Black Turtle Patriarch, he still had to sigh at the cold hearts of these old bastards when he saw this scene. But sighing was just sighing. There were still 11 heads missing, and Yu would not be lenient. Moreover, these descendants of the Black Tortoise gathered together, which could save a lot of time. They didn't have to run around and kill them one by one. In addition, Yu's eyes flashed. If the 1,000 Nether Saint wanted to come, this would be the last chance. Lord Dragon Sage was very confused. Since talking to Yu, he knew that there must be a big problem in the Crimson Peak Strait. If it were before, he would be very happy and take the initiative to join forces with Yu to get rid of this big trouble. However, it just so happened that this matter involved the Dark World. Thus, Lord Longsheng immediately changed his mind. Nonsense, that was the Dark World. Who knew how many secrets were hidden in it? It was not an exaggeration to say that it was unfathomable. It was necessary to observe. At the same time, Dragon Sage ordered Black Armor to activate the spies planted in the Crimson Peak Strait to pass the news to the outside. Although this was very dangerous, and might even expose the manpower that the East Sea had painstakingly arranged over the years, Lord Dragon Sage could not care less. He had to know what Yu was going to do. Then the news was passed out. Yu was killing people. To be honest, this was very normal. Knowing that it involved the Dark World, he did not choose to keep the peace. He would definitely make a wave of trouble. But the key was that these people Yu killed were of no use. Of course, this could not be said. These descendants of the Black Tortoise were all very strong. They were the upper echelons of power in the Crimson Peak Strait. After killing them, the entire Crimson Peak Strait would be completely chaotic. But this was no threat to the Black Turtle Patriarch. After many years of dealing with him, they had fought and killed each other many times. Dragon Sage knew the Black Turtle Patriarch very well. He did not care about things like bloodline descendants. No matter how many Yu killed, they could not threaten him. To use this method to force the Black Turtle Patriarch to release the people. Haha, it was nice to say that he was naive, but it was simply stupid. But this boy you didn't seem like an idiot. Or perhaps he had some other goal in killing these people. The latest news came out. The descendants of the Black Tortoise had almost all gathered together to protect themselves. A bright light bloomed in Dragon Sage's eyes. Either you gave up the current action of killing to vent his anger, or he could only continue to kill these people. The former was fine, but if it was the latter, in other words, Yu would lose his invisibility ability. The Black Tortoise or the 1,000 Nether Saint only needed to wait for him. What would he do? Yu chose to continue killing. The simulation and transformation ability of the Body of Rules was indeed amazing, but it was still very difficult to deceive the senses of the saint. But with the power of the innate spirit, all of this became perfect, enough for Yu to pass off the fake as the real one. Therefore, the action of the descendants of the Black Tortoise to survive was actually useless. On the contrary, it would only put themselves in more danger. Because there were so many people, it was too easy for Yu to blend in. For example, he was thinking now, who should he kill first? With a cursory glance in the huge hall, there were at least dozens of descendants of the Black Tortoise gathered here. It was too easy to achieve the goal. Who the hell is the murderer? Since he dared to be the enemy of the Patriarch, why did he kill us juniors to vent his anger? A descendant of the Black Tortoise said angrily, but he could not hide the paleness of his face. Didn't I say it was related to Tsang Zhu and Tsang Hua? I knew they were jinxes and would definitely cause trouble. I just want to know, how did the murderer kill? The brothers and sisters who died before, the 7th and the 12th, were not easy to provoke, but they were directly killed without any movement. I heard that it was a direct attack. The whole process was very fast. When the 7th died, the maid beside him said that the murderer opened the door and killed him, not giving him a chance to resist. How is that possible? The 7th strength is not far from the Saint Realm. Even if a Saint Realm expert attacked, he should be able to block 1 or 2 attacks, right? Perhaps he was poisoned in advance. Just as he finished speaking, someone patted his shoulder. Hey, he wasn't poisoned. He really was killed directly. In the next moment, there was a muffled puff. Brain juice mixed with blood sprayed out, and the scene suddenly fell silent. Yu said lightly, "Did you see? He was killed like this. The murderer is here. Kill him. Hurry up and do it." In the midst of screams, a group of descendants of the black tortoise fled in all directions. Yu stretched his body, lifted his hand, and pressed forward, crushing several sea race cultivators who rushed over to him into dregs on the spot. Then his 5 fingers suddenly tightened inwards. Space fiercely distorted, and 2 descendants of the black tortoise were sucked in. Puff, puff, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Suddenly, there was a large flower of dark red blood. There were 3. The efficiency of killing was indeed amazing. At this moment, Yu's eyes flashed, and he heavily stamped his foot. Boom! The ground collapsed, and the terrifying impact of power was like a tide, instantly blasting in all directions. Then, like a thick fog, darkness suddenly descended, sealing off the entire hall. But now, the shockwave of strength that erupted from that stomp caused the area where Yu was standing to be completely blank. St. Thousand Nether, today is a grudge between me and the black tortoise old ancestor. Are you sure you want to intervene? Pretending to be ignorant was something that required great skill. For example, right now, Yu clearly knew everything, and he was plotting against the other party, but he still had to act like he didn't know anything in front of others. This was a test of skill. Fortunately, with Yu's current level of acting, it was basically no problem for him to do this. It could even be said that he could do it with ease. For example, his slightly frowning eyebrows, the gloominess in his eyes, and a trace of just the right amount of fear were all seen by Thousand Nether. In the darkness, his calm voice sounded, "Mr. Ninth, the black tortoise old ancestor is on good terms with the dark world. Please be magnanimous and don't continue to cause trouble in the Crimson Peak Strait. As long as Mr. Ninth is willing to retreat, everything that happened before will be written off. The dark world can guarantee that they will not pursue this matter in the future." With this level of skill, he could definitely win the Best Actor award. If he hadn't personally participated in the entire process of St. Thousand Nether summoning other dark true saints to descend to the Crimson Peak Strait to kill people, he might have really believed it. This voice, this tone, this sincerity from the heart. It was simply perfect. Sure enough, there's always a higher mountain, and the career of acting will never reach its peak. We need to guard against arrogance and impatience, and learn humbly. Yu's eyebrows furrowed even tighter, and a trace of struggle flashed in his eyes as he attempted to make a final effort. I have no intention of becoming enemies with the dark world, but Sangju is my woman. I must save her and leave. If the dark world is willing to stand idly by, I will be eternally grateful. St. Thousand Nether sighed. If so, the dark world can only choose to be enemies with Mr. Knife. Chapter 13:16. Forgive me for offending you. Yu shouted out loud and punched out. Thousand Nether waved his sleeves to block it. Darkness fell from all directions like a tide. In a confrontation of true divine level powers, the hall was torn to pieces like paper. The sea race gathered here were like ants in front of a landslide. They had no power to resist and could only scream in despair. In truth, compared to Yu's killing speed, it was countless times faster. 9. The stone tower counted. 2 more descendants of the black turtle to make up 36 people. Yu said, "Thousand Nether, do you really want to stop me today? It's not that I want to stop Miss Ninth, it's that you don't want to stop." Thousand Nether's expression was solemn. Enough people have died in Crimson Peak Strait. Enough is enough. You think I can stop just because you want me to? So what if it's the dark world? Yu laughed wildly. He raised his hand and pressed down. A descendant of the black turtle ancestor exploded in the air. He looked at Thousand Nether with a cold and ruthless expression. "That's it for today. If you dare to stop me again, don't blame me for being rude." He turned and left. In the direction that Yu left, A descendant of the black turtle ancestor thought that he had escaped, but his expression suddenly changed, and he exploded into pieces. Ha ha! What followed was Qin Yu's wild laughter. Then he swaggered away, vanishing from sight. Thousand Nether's face was pale, but he was smiling in his heart. Arrogant, overbearing, strong, ruthless. Qin Yu's current performance perfectly matched the image of a young man who had suddenly become dizzy with power. Very good. It seemed that the black turtle ancestor's judgment was right. Qin Yu would not give up so easily. Then he would continue to tangle with him. When Hundred Trace and the other Darkness True Divine arrived, they could combine their power and summon the fire of eternal night. At that time, it would be Qin Yu's death. New news was sent back to the Dragon Palace. Qin Yu's killing spree had drawn out Thousand Nether. The two sides did not entangle for long. After a short fight, Qin Yu took the initiative to retreat. After Dragon Sage read the news, he could not help but raise his hand and rub his eyebrows. He felt even more confused. What was Qin Yu doing? They seemed arrogant, domineering, and massacring without restraint. But in fact, in his eyes, they were like headless flies buzzing around without any practical use other than making people feel annoyed. The newly ascended Miss Peach Garden's ninth lady was only at this level? If that was the case, then the Crimson Peak Strait would be a calamity. Should he inform the Yardmaster? After all, Qin Yu was in the East Sea. If something were to happen to him, it would be hard for him to clear his name. As for the Yardmaster, she was known to be a person who did not listen to reason at all. Just as Lord Longsheng was feeling a headache and a little disappointed, his complexion suddenly changed. After thinking for a moment, he coughed and said with a smile, "What's the matter, Miss Ninth? Lord Dragon Sage should already know what I've done." Qin Yu's voice rang out in the Grand Hall. The smile on Longsheng's face didn't diminish. "I just heard the news that Miss Ninth went on a killing spree in the Crimson Summit Strait. Her power is truly awe-inspiring." Qin Yu lightly said, "I fear that after Lord Dragon Sage hears this news, he will curse me in his heart for my stupidity. He might even think about notifying Honorable Master, lest I die in the Scarlet Summit Strait, and cause trouble for Lord Dragon Sage." "Dragon Sage, you can guess what I'm thinking. What else do you want me to say?" "Ah, ha ha ha, Miss Ninth must be joking. Since you've done this, you must have your own reasons. How could I dare to criticize you?" Qin Yu said, "Is that so? Then I have the heart of a petty person. I hope Lord Dragon Sage won't take offense. Although you're apologizing, I still feel that you're cursing me in a roundabout way." Lord Dragon Sage took a deep breath and decided not to pester him any further. He directly said, "What's the matter, Miss Ninth?" Now he reacted. With what Qin Yu had just said, his previous speculations were no longer valid. Qin Yu was not stupid. He absolutely had his own reasons for doing what he did in the Scarlet Summit Strait. Qin Yu said, "I have a matter to trouble Lord Dragon Sage. Please open your comprehensive senses in the East Sea. Once the aura of darkness descends, inform me immediately." It was simple if it wasn't a big deal. At most, it would just consume some strength. But the meaning revealed in his words was a bit startling. Dragon Sage already knew that the Thousand Nether Saint was in the Scarlet Summit Strait. Listening to Qin Yu's words, it seemed that someone from the Dark World was coming. With Qin Yu's cultivation, he didn't need to care about ordinary characters, much less the dignified Dragon Sage of the East Sea. In other words, Qin Yu judged that this person was strong enough that he had to treat him with caution. Darkness True Sage. It wasn't difficult to figure this out. Dragon Sage's complexion changed, and countless thoughts flashed through his mind. He said in a dry voice, "What does Miss Ninth mean? People from the Dark World are coming. Could it be that you want to—" He didn't say the word kill, but the meaning was clear. This surnamed Qin really wanted to blow up the heavens. In this world, others could not wait to hide from the Dark World. But he was different. Not only did he oppose them, but he also wanted to kill them. Not to mention whether or not he could succeed. Even if he did, the grudge between them would be too great. The Dark World would not let this matter rest. And most importantly, the East Sea would be dragged in. The consequences would be unimaginable. Qin Yu said, Lord Dragon Sage is overthinking things. I have a clear understanding of my own strength. With my strength alone, it is impossible for me to slaughter a true sage. Dragon Sage was startled. What did Qin Yu mean by that? With your own strength alone? You want to pull me into your group? Miss Ninth, the East Sea has no intention of becoming enemies with the Dark World. No matter what you want to do, I will not interfere. This was called a firm attitude, without any room for compromise. Qin Yu was speechless. It had to be known that not long ago, the Dragon Sage had said something like, if you have something to say, I won't decline. Although he knew that you were just running your mouth, in such a short period of time, there was no one else who could swallow those words into their stomach. Moreover, Dragon Sage's imagination was quite rich. Qin Yu's goal was to save people. Killing people was at most a side effect. So before he finished saving people, he didn't think of touching anyone. At least not now. Dragon Sage, rest assured that I absolutely do not have any plans to kill a true sage from the Dark World. I can swear to this that the only reason I am searching for the coordinates of a true sage is because it is necessary for the follow-up plan. Dragon Sage was silent for a long time. I can agree to this. I ask Miss Ninth to keep your promise, otherwise I will have no choice but to interfere. Moreover, there is one more thing I must tell Miss Ninth. The number of times the dragon scale can be used is limited. After I contact you, it will probably break. Qin Yu rubbed his temples. I understand. After the call ended, he bitterly smiled. He thought that these old fellows were really thick-skinned. He hadn't heard that the number of times the dragon scale could be used was limited. It was clear that he had sensed trouble and wanted to withdraw. He couldn't blame Dragon Sage. After all, strictly speaking, he had helped a great deal. Moreover, it wasn't a mistake for him to protect himself when the situation wasn't right. The East Sea was Dragon Sage's territory. As long as he wanted to, he could sense any fluctuations of strength. The only possible flaw in the plan had been patched up. Next, Qin Yu only needed to wait for this true sage by you to arrive. Of course, wasting time was shameful. While he waited, he might be able to polish the follow-up plan and avoid mistakes as much as possible. Qin Yu opened his hand. Between his fingers, besides a drop of old ancestor black turtle's blood, there was also a black crystal. This thing was formed from a highly compressed dark power. It was something that Qin Yu had casually picked up when he was killing people. No matter how cautious Saint Thousand Nether was, he still wouldn't have imagined that he would be schemed against like this. Schwa. Qin Yu quickly left, leaving the Scarlet Summit straight. The reason was simple. Since he wanted to suppress him, he couldn't be detected. Thus, this true sage by you definitely wouldn't directly arrive at the Scarlet Summit Strait. In the blink of an eye, a day passed. Somewhere on the seabed, Qin Yu was sitting cross-legged. He suddenly opened his eyes, and the dragon scale flew in front of him. He's here. A divine sense fluctuation transmitted a coordinate. Before Qin Yu could respond, there was a loud cracking sound as the dragon scale turned to powder. Lord Dragon Sage was quite decisive. Qin Yu's lips twitched. He wasn't in the mood to think about these things. He lifted a hand and tore through space. He stepped in. The moment his figure submerged, a rich darkness erupted, submerging him within. True Sage by you had arrived. He was indeed extremely cautious. When he entered the East Sea, he made as little noise as possible and restrained his aura as much as possible. This involved the Peach Garden's Qin Yu, as well as the legendary pre-celestial spirit, so he couldn't be too careful. Otherwise, once news of this leaked out, the Dark World would be forced into a passive position. But a true sage was still a true sage. Wherever he was his own domain. At this time, the sea below was as flat as a mirror, without a single fluctuation. True Sage by you lifted a hand to determine his position. But just as he was about to leave, the mirror-like sea below suddenly shattered into countless pieces. In the next moment, the space in front of him shattered and a rich darkness gushed out. True Sage by you's complexion changed, and he relaxed. This was someone from the Dark World. Moreover, he seemed to have seen this aura before. His eyes flashed. True Sage by you said in a low voice, "It's you." On the day 1,000 nether summoned me, you and I met. He hadn't been seen through. In truth, the first glance was the most dangerous. As long as he could deceive them, everything else would be much simpler. Of course, this was only relatively speaking. Acting as an actor in front of true sage wasn't easy at all. The slightest bit of carelessness could cause all of his previous efforts to be wasted. In the darkness, Yu deeply chuckled. You must be unfamiliar with me, but that's fine. The reason I came here today is to make friends with you. There was a bit of arrogance in his politeness. True sage Yu frowned. It's fine to make friends, but your movements today are far too great. This is the East Sea, the Dragon Sage's holy Tao domain. True sage Yu, are you worried that the Dragon Sage will discover that you and I were suppressing Yu in the Scarlet Summit Strait? Yu's voice was cold. You worry too much. If it weren't for the Dragon Sage's help, how could I have locked onto your position? True sage Yu's complexion changed. You are saying that 1,000 Nether chose to join forces with the Dragon Sage? I'm sorry, Lord Dragon Sage. Although I know you are very resistant, I still have to trick you. In any case, what happened in the East Sea will be blown up, and you won't be able to wash yourself clean no matter what. So you should help me share some of the burden. That's right. True sage Yu is right. That is why I came here today. I want to make friends with you. Chapter 13:17. Yu continued. Yu, the Black Tortoise, and the Dragon Sage decided to work together to suppress Yu and divide the power of the pre-celestial spirit in his body. But I don't trust the Dragon Sage, and I don't trust Yu. True Saint Yu frowned. He felt that things were a little strange. Yu was actually working with the Dragon Sage. This was something he had not expected. However, this was the East Sea after all. It was obviously impossible to completely hide what had happened in the Crimson Peak Strait from Long Sheng. Until now, the East Sea hadn't made any moves, and Yu hadn't given an explanation for this matter either. That was the nature of the human heart. Once they had doubts, there was no need to say anything else. They would fill in the gaps on their own. This had nothing to do with cultivation realms. What was being calculated was human nature, or rather, the dark side of human nature that all living beings possessed. What do you want? Yu snapped his fingers. It's very simple. You and I are both latecomers. If we don't want to end up empty-handed or be pushed out, then let's join forces. True sage Yu sneered. Why would I believe you? Yu said, because besides this, you have no better choice. As he finished speaking, he took a step backwards and tore through space. Darkness flooded in like a tide. True Saint Yu, I will arrive at the Crimson Summit Strait a little later than you. After that, you can see the reaction of Yu and the others. If you don't understand, please remain silent for the time being. I will explain it to you later. At that time, perhaps you will believe me. After Long Sheng had given him the coordinates, he had been sensing from afar. However, what surprised him was that he had not sensed Yu's aura. Instead, two incomparably tyrannical dark forces had appeared. Could it be that the world of darkness had sent two darkness true sages to the Red Peak Strait? Yu realized this, so he didn't dare to act rashly. However, the most important thing now was to figure out what the dark world wanted to do. If it was just the importance of the darkness conversion ritual, there was no need to make such a big fuss about it. After all, it was not a simple matter for the darkness true sage to appear in the vast Yang world. One would have to pay a huge price, unless they had a more important purpose besides the darkness transformation ritual. What could it be? He didn't need to think too much to grasp the crux of the matter. Yu, could it be that in the Scarlet Summit Strait, someone had already discovered the secret he was hiding? That's right, it's like this, it must be like this. According to the style of the dark world, they would only react like this when there was a great benefit. In the Lost Garden, Yu had obtained a heaven-defying lucky chance in the Peach Garden 9 paths, allowing him to leap to the peak of the world and even obtain a glorious battle record of slaying a saint. There was definitely something wrong with this. Everyone wanted to unravel this secret and even obtain it, including the East Sea Dragon Sage. That was why he was able to pinpoint the key directly. As for whether one of the two darkness true saints was Qin Yu in disguise, Long Sheng didn't even think about it. Even Sage Thousand Nether and Patriarch Black Turtle had not considered this aspect. The reason was simple. There had never been anyone in this world who could impersonate a true divine. It was not only because of the absolute power, but also because of the true divine aura, which could not be faked at all. His eyes were cloudy and uncertain. Dragon Sage's thoughts were fiercely battling. He couldn't help but feel an impulse to join the internal strife of the Scarlet Peak Strait. If it really was possible, then offending the Dark World in order to obtain Qin Yu's secrets wasn't an unacceptable matter. After all, everything in this world was about karma. As long as the expected benefits were great enough, the risk of being beheaded could be ignored. Calm down. Calm down. Long Sheng took a deep breath. He had experienced countless hardships in his life. He had long passed the age of being impulsive and not caring about anything. Since he had sensed the possibility of what was going to happen in the Scarlet Peak Canyon, it was impossible to pretend that he didn't know. Qin Yu's life and death was his own problem. However, Long Sheng was extremely interested in the secret of the Lost Garden, but it was obviously not wise to act rashly. Not to mention whether things were as he thought. Even if it was really so, including Qin Nether, there were already 3 Darkness True Saints gathered in the Scarlet Peak Strait. With the addition of Patriarch Black Turtle, there would be 4 true divine existences. This was a very terrifying force. Even if a true divine were to face 4 people of the same level, if he didn't want to die, he could only escape in a sorry state. The reason why Long Sheng dared to interfere despite knowing this was because this was the East Sea, his home ground. If he was willing to sacrifice some of his Taoist connotation and borrow the power of the entire East Sea, it was not impossible for him to fight against 2 people alone. This was Long Sheng's greatest reliance. In addition, he could hide in the dark and attack when they were unprepared. If he chose the right time, there was still a possibility of success. This was more than enough. To be able to become a true divine, Long Sheng was not an indecisive person. Just the information he obtained today was worth the risk. A bright light burst out from the depths of Long Sheng's eyes as he took a step forward, and his figure abruptly disappeared. In a world of ice and snow, in the camp of the East Sea Sea Race, Black Armor's complexion changed. Who is it? Space shook and Long Sheng stepped out. It's me. Black Armor hurriedly bowed. Subordinate greets Lord Long Sheng. Get up. Don't tell anyone else that I'm here. Long Sheng waved his hand and said in a low voice, mobilize all forces at all costs. I want to know everything that happens in the Scarlet Peak Strait. Hidden stakes were precious. If they were used, there would inevitably be clues. Once they were discovered, there would be heavy casualties. But so what? Saints were high above and had stepped onto the other side of cultivation. They were no longer ordinary people and only sought the supreme great Tao. The ruler's vacancy, he, East Sea Long Sheng, was also interested in it. So what if some people died? Even if it was 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times, it was still worth it. Black Armor could faintly smell the cold and ruthless aura of Lord Long Sheng. He didn't know what was happening, but it was clear that something horrifying was about to happen. Yes, Subordinate will do it immediately. He didn't dare to speak any nonsense. He turned and hurried away. Schwa, Saint Thousand Nether opened his eyes, a look of joy on his face. Saint Bayou had arrived. He had already sensed his aura. He stood up and stepped down. Space twisted, and his figure appeared at the edge of the Scarlet Peak Strait. He cupped his hands together and said, True Saint Bayou, you finally arrived. His eyes swept around, and he frowned. Your friend didn't come with you? Friend? This term grated on True Saint Bayou's ears. This was because not too long ago, a strange Darkness True Saint had appeared and said that he wanted to be friends with him. His first reaction was, how did Thousand Nether know about this? Thinking back to what the mysterious Darkness True Saint had said before he left, True Saint Bayou took a deep breath and calmed his thoughts. He lightly said, he isn't with me. Saint Thousand Nether's eyes darkened. He took a deep breath and said, Qin Yu is currently in the Scarlet Peak Strait, but he definitely won't stay here forever. Moreover, if he discovers that we have arrived here, all our efforts will be for naught. So, if possible, I would like to ask Saint Bayou to hurry up your friend. We don't have much time left. Bayou frowned inwardly. He couldn't figure out what was going on. But looking at Thousand Nether's current appearance, it didn't seem like he was faking it. He thought for a moment and was about to say something when a deep laugh sounded out. Saint Thousand Nether, there is no need to be anxious. I have arrived. Darkness quietly surged out. An icy cold aura spread out, revealing endless despair. It was like an eternal night had arrived. This aura, Saint Thousand Nether frowned. He didn't know why, but he felt that it was somewhat familiar. Besides that, there was also something strange about it. However, he didn't think too much about it. Since this was Saint Bayou's friend, there was naturally no problem with his identity. He immediately smiled and said, "Good. Since the two of you have arrived, we can begin and draw out Chinyu." Wrapped in darkness, Chinyu chuckled. "Of course. We traveled tens of thousands of miles to come here, for this matter. Thousand Nether, go and prepare." Saint Bayou glanced at him, but didn't say anything. Thousand Nether's eyes swept over the two. He smiled and nodded. "Okay." He turned around, a gloomy look in his eyes. There was definitely some problem between this Bayou and this mysterious darkness, true divine. But that didn't matter. With the binding of the dark oath and the black turtle old ancestor about to complete his transformation, he didn't need to fear them. Schwa! Thousand Nether's figure vanished from sight. Bayou's eyes were icy cold. "You can explain now." Chinyu smiled deeply. "It's very simple. The matter of me meeting you before was arranged by Chinyu. His goal was to make you careless and think that you've already joined forces with me. In reality, you've been excluded by everyone. So that was how it was. No wonder the Dragon Sage had helped and provided this person with coordinates. This was one of the points that True Divine Bayou hadn't been able to figure out. But here came the problem. Chin Nether's arrangements didn't make him doubt him. After all, if he didn't mention the Eastern Sea Dragon Sage, how could this person lock onto his position? This was a dead knot. Chinyu smiled. He flipped his hand and a black crystal flew out. True Divine Bayou should recognize this aura, right? It's Chin Nether's power of darkness. This is the token he gave me. With this, I can sense your approximate position. If you ask me how I locked onto your position, I will say that it is because of my own cultivation that I am particularly sensitive to darkness aura. Of course, this thing can't be used too far away, but at close range, it is enough to confuse one's vision and make it impossible for True Divine Bayou to identify you." Chinyu smiled. "If you don't believe me, you can give it a try." "Okay." True Divine Bayou took a step back and vanished from sight. At the same time, all of his aura disappeared. Chinyu turned around and pointed. "You are here." He turned and pointed again. "Here." "Here." He turned again. "Here." Space shook. True Divine Bayou appeared with a pale face. He already believed everything Chinyu said. He had no choice but to believe. As a true divine, he had absolute confidence in his ability to restrain his aura. Even if he faced a darkness true divine, if he deliberately hid it, he would not be discovered. But now, facing Chinyu, it was like he had been placed under the sun. There was no place for him to hide. Why did Chin Nether's power of darkness have such an effect? Could it be that this fellow had wanted to deal with him a long time ago? That's right, that must be it. Otherwise, how could he specially cultivate a method to lock onto his aura? But why? There was no enmity between them. Although there had been some conflicts of interest, strictly speaking, they weren't worth mentioning. No, he was thinking too much. Although there was no enmity between them, they had a common goal. Quota. It must be for that quota. Damn it. Once Chin Nether completed this transformation that involved the black turtle old ancestor, he would have the qualifications to compete. That must be it. That must be it. Previously, it was said that some things about the human heart weren't completely correct, but it was clear that it was correct once again. Bayou, who had figured it out, no longer had any doubts about Chinyu. He said in a deep voice, "Okay, I will join forces with you." In the darkness, Chinyu snapped his fingers and laughed. "Believe me, True Divine Bayou, This is definitely the best decision you have made. This result was simply perfect. Chapter 13:18. At the Crimson Peak Strait, where Yin and Yang met, Sage Xianyu pushed open the door and entered. He said in a deep voice, "Brother Turtle, the two true sages of the dark world have arrived. We can begin now." Within the tortoise shell, the black turtle old ancestor opened his eyes. Within the dim yellow turbidity, a brilliant light erupted. "I'll have to trouble you with everything else, Qianyu. It is my duty to help Brother Turtle complete his darkness transformation." Sage Thousand Nether paused for a moment. However, the two darkness true sages that descended seemed to be related to each other. The Black Turtle Patriarch said, "In any case, I'm naturally on your side, Qianyu." "Ha, good. Then I won't have to worry about anything else. I'll give my all." Sage Thousand Nether laughed loudly and gestured with his hand. "Brother Turtle, let's go." The ancestor of the black turtle nodded, and the turtle shell floated out of the hall. His deep voice resounded throughout the palace. "My loyal subordinates, now is the time for you to protect me." Rumble. The palace built on the crimson rock wall suddenly trembled. Pieces of stone shattered, revealing a black hole that led underground. Following that, burly figures with powerful auras walked out from the ground and knelt on the ground with fanatical expressions. "We swear to protect the ancestor with our lives. We swear to protect the ancestor with our lives." Patriarch Black Turtle waved his hand. "Let's go." Countless figures soared into the sky and surrounded the Black Turtle Patriarch and 1,000 Nether Saint as they flew toward the dungeon. The journey was smooth, and there were no accidents. The entire dungeon was surrounded by the fanatical members of the Sea Clan. Patriarch Xingui turned around and asked, "Qianyu, where are the other two true sages?" Sage Thousand Nether looked up at the dungeon. "They have already entered." He was not surprised by this. The aura of the darkness transformation ceremony naturally could not be hidden from the senses of Baizu and Baizu. Without saying anything else, Patriarch Black Turtle stepped into the dungeon. They passed through a long passageway and arrived at the deepest depths of the dungeon. The door was open, and true Saint Baiyu and Qianyu stood at the entrance, their bodies submerged in darkness. Qianyu cupped his hands. "This is true Sage Baiyu," Qianyu lightly said. "I am Myriad Flow." The order was really coincidental. The corner of Qianyu's mouth twitched. "Even if it's a fake name, can't you be a little more serious?" Patriarch Black Turtle calmly cupped his hands. "Thank you, true saints, for taking the trouble to come here. After today, I will definitely repay you." Seeing true Saint Baiu's cold expression, as if he had no intention of speaking, Qianyu smiled and said, "Old ancestor Black Turtle is too polite. The reason we came here is because there are enough benefits to be obtained. Then, let us begin." "All right." The Black Turtle ancestor stepped into the deepest part of the dungeon. Zhang Zhu and Zhang Zhu suddenly opened their eyes, fear appearing on their faces at the same time. Patriarch. The depths of his eyes were filled with despair. It was obvious that time was up. Once the darkness transformation ritual was completed, they would die without a burial. The Black Turtle Patriarch's gaze swept across them. "Don't blame me. This is your fate." He walked over to Zhang Zhu and Zhang Hua and sat down cross-legged. "Qianyu, I'll have to trouble you." Sage Thousand Nether nodded. "Brother Turtle, don't worry." Taking a step forward, the extremely dense darkness in this space immediately boiled. It was like an endless black fog that instantly covered everything. Zhang Zhu and Zhang Hua froze, pain on their faces. Blood seeped out from their pores, constantly dripping to the ground. Then, this blood seemed to be pulled by an invisible strength, constantly extending outwards like a living creature. Wherever it passed, marks would be activated, absorbing the blood of the siblings and releasing a crimson halo of light. But this blood-red light didn't pierce through the darkness. Instead, it fused together, forming a strange black and red mixture that gave off a strange and icy feeling. From within the turtle shell, the black turtle patriarch let out a cry of joy and pain. The darkness transformation ritual had begun. Sage Thousand Others said, "True Saints Bayu and Wanlu, please enter the darkness transformation ritual. Make sure to hide your aura. Once Qin Yu appears, immediately join forces to suppress him." After a pause, his voice became even more dignified. "I ask that you two true saints do not interfere with the darkness transformation ritual. If an accident occurs, it will be difficult for you and I to escape responsibility." This was the reason why Thousand Nether and the others entered the darkness transformation ritual. When it came to the layout of the dark world, no one dared to act recklessly. Bayu nodded without expression and stepped in. Qin Yu chuckled. "Of course, we don't want to provoke any trouble. But in truth, what did the layout of the dark world have to do with him? He had made so many preparations just for this moment. If he didn't interfere, wouldn't it be a waste? After all, his goal was to save people. So, Thousand Nether was wrong, completely and utterly wrong. Above the Scarlet Summit Strait, passing through the endless seawater, one arrived at a vast expanse of white. At this time, strong winds roared, stirring up countless snowflakes that wailed and wailed in the air. The originally gloomy skies were now as black as ink. A terrifying aura was released from it, pressing down on them like mountains, making it hard for them to breathe. In the tent, Long Sheng stood up. The darkness transformation ritual had begun. This matter violated the rules of the Vastyon world and was not permitted by the will of Vastyon. Thus, heavenly tribulation would descend. The strong winds and the pitch-black skies were only the prelude to heavenly tribulation. But right now, Longsheng didn't care about this. Since the Black Turtle Patriarch dared to open the darkness transformation ritual, he must have made preparations. The key was Qin Yu. This was the best chance to kill the Black Turtle Patriarch. If he wanted to attack, he would do so now. Would he come or not? He already knew that there were 3 darkness true saints descending upon the Scarlet Summit Strait. Normal people would choose to retreat, but Qin Yu might not do so. He was well aware of the unfathomable depths of the dark world, but he still chose to be their enemy. Outside the Lost Garden, he fought 1 against 2 and put Netherworld Saint and Thousand Nether Saint at a disadvantage. In the end, he even joined forces with the Yardmaster to kill Netherworld Saint. This undoubtedly gave Qin Yu great confidence today. If Qin Yu retreated and gave up on saving people, Longsheng would pretend that he had never been here. But if he was courting death, and Longsheng didn't mind taking a share of the spoils. In any case, he was going to die anyway. Rather than being taken away by the dark world, he might as well take advantage of him. Outside the dungeon, the sea race cultivators standing around suddenly roared up into the sky. Blood-colored flames suddenly erupted from their bodies, fusing together in the blink of an eye and rushing into the sky like a prairie fire. The flesh and blood of these sea race cultivators were burned to ashes by the flames, leaving only white bones standing in the bloody flames. Roar, roar, roars constantly reverberated. A giant phantom emerged from the bloody flames. It stood up straight and roared angrily at the sky. Rumble, rumble, the seawater tumbled. Undercurrents formed beneath the deep sea, and under the influence of the vast Yangwil, they rushed into the Scarlet Crest Strait from all directions. This was a warning from the heavens and earth. The majestic and thick city walls collapsed beneath the impact of the undercurrents. The entire city fell into chaos. Countless buildings were torn to pieces, and the sea folk living in the city screamed in panic as they fled in all directions. But beneath the wrath of the heavens and earth, even if they were only slightly affected, it wasn't something that ordinary sea folk could resist. As the darkness transmutation ritual began, it was destined that the Scarlet Crest Strait would become a living hell on Earth. Perhaps not even 1 or 2 out of 10 of these sea folk would survive. The Black Turtle Old Ancestor was well aware of this, and Thousand Nether, who was responsible for presiding over the darkness transmutation ritual, also knew. But they hadn't done anything. They were only some insignificant sea folk, so if they died, they died. Moreover, killing these sea folk could slightly offset the might of the heavenly tribulation from the vast young world. Although it wasn't much, just a little was worth it to them. The darkness transmutation ritual began. The black turtle old ancestor strength was drawn out, forming a giant bead that floated between him, Songhua, and Songzhu. Two thick ribbons of light wrapped around the three people. As the darkness transmutation ritual began, darkness appeared within the sphere, like ink pouring into water, spreading outwards. At the same time, the auras of the black turtle old ancestor, Songzhu, and Songhua constantly transformed. The darkness transmutation ritual was not recognized by the vast young world. In particular, with the black turtle old ancestor's cultivation, his choice would be recognized by the world's will as a betrayal. Thus, when the tribulation arrived, all life would be erased. This was a punishment from the vast young world. No one could avoid it, not even the black turtle old ancestor. Thus, he needed Songzhu and Songhua to be his scapegoats. When the heavenly tribulation arrived, Songzhu and Songhua, who had been transformed into the darkness attribute and were one with his strength, would be annihilated. As for him, he could escape this calamity. He could take back the strength of the darkness transformation and begin a new life. The specific process was certainly much more complicated than this. But all we needed to know was the general course of events. Everything went smoothly. The black turtle old ancestor was cautious enough and had made ample preparations. Songzhu and Songhua were nearly perfectly compatible with his strength. This caused the darkness transmutation process to progress faster than expected. In at most an hour, everything would be completed. Thousand Nether presided over the darkness transmutation. If this matter was successfully completed, he would also receive a reward from the dark world. After all, the smooth birth of a true saint that resided in the dark world was an inestimable wealth to the dark world. But now, Thousand Nether was faintly anxious. This was because Qin Yu had yet to appear. The darkness transmutation ritual was when the black turtle old ancestor was at his weakest and also his last chance to save someone. Had he chosen to leave? No, Qin Yu was definitely still there. Thousand Nether took a deep breath. He had an intuition that Qin Yu was hiding in the shadows, paying attention to the continuation of the darkness transmutation ritual. Yes, it was like this. As time passed, his intuition became increasingly intense. Do it, Qin Yu, quickly do it. I will personally bury you and strip away everything that originally belonged to you. In fact, Thousand Nether's intuition was correct. Qin Yu was indeed paying attention to the progress of the darkness transmutation ritual. Not just that, but he was currently standing within the Great Transformation Array. And most importantly, Qin Yu had already begun. He casually flicked his finger, and the blood of the black turtle old ancestor fell onto a dark red mark on the ground. The blood was instantly absorbed, and the blood-red halo of light released by the mark became even stronger before everything returned to tranquility. As expected, there was no rejection. Qin Yu glanced at the Songzhu and Songhua siblings and then at the happy black turtle old ancestor. He sighed inwardly. Although he had realized that this old fellow was cruel and merciless, he felt that his limits had been refreshed. Chapter 1319. Not surprisingly, Songzhu and Songhua were the direct descendants of the Black Turtle Patriarch. To put more bluntly, they were his daughters and sons. Only in this way could the two of them be almost perfectly compatible with the power of the Black Turtle Patriarch and be able to merge their bloodlines. Perhaps Songzhu and Songhua didn't know this before, but now, under the Dar transformation ritual, they were almost one with the Black Turtle Patriarch and could feel the attraction of their bloodlines. This was truly a cruel thing that was hard to accept. The aura of the heavenly tribulation was getting stronger and stronger. The cities in the Crimson Summit Strait had become ruins. The undercurrent carried a terrifying power and rushed madly towards the dungeon. The crimson flames that soared to the sky blocked the undercurrent. The giant phantom within continued to silently roar towards the sky. Suddenly, a roar sounded above the 9 heavens. It was the roar of thunder, and also the final warning to the Black Turtle Patriarch. The dark transformation ritual was nearing its end. The light ball floating above his head, which contained all the power of the Black Turtle Patriarch, was almost completely black, as if it contained an entire sea of ink. The Black Turtle Patriarch opened his eyes and let out a low roar. "You forced me to do this. You forced me to do this. I want to live. I want to live. You can't give me lifespan, so I can only take it from somewhere else. No one can stop me, not even the heavens." As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up. At this moment, his whole body seemed to reverse the flow of time. The wrinkles on his face quickly flattened and disappeared, and his skin became fresh and lustrous again. In the blink of an eye, he changed from an old and decayed man who could die at any time to a middle-aged man with a straight back, sharp eyebrows, and majestic aura. His eyes were as black as the endless black sea. The dark transformation was complete. The next moment, above the dark sky, thunder exploded. It was so bright that it directly lit up the entire sky. The thunder crashed down, and the seawater directly disintegrated. Before it touched the thunder itself, it evaporated and dissipated. Then, a strange scene appeared. In the extreme north of the endless East Sea, a black hole appeared in the snow-white world of ice, like a suddenly opened mouth, swallowing everything. Whether it was ice or seawater, all obstacles disappeared in the face of the thunder of the heavenly tribulation. A straight passage appeared, straight into the Crimson Summit Strait, straight to the dungeon. The monstrous blood-red light collapsed as soon as it came into contact with it. The huge phantom let out an angry roar as it disintegrated inch by inch. The sea race cultivators, who had burned their flesh and blood and were only left with white bones, were crushed to pieces at the same time. Yes, this was the might of the vast Yang Will's obliteration, and nothing could resist it. If not for this, the Black Turtle Patriarch would have transformed into darkness long ago. Why did he have to suffer until now? Saint Thousand Nether, who was managing the darkness transformation ritual, felt his heart tighten. Although he was more concerned about when Chinyu would appear, he couldn't allow anything to happen to old Ancestor Black Turtle. Fortunately, the Black Turtle Patriarch was well prepared. It was not a big problem to use his 2 children as substitutes. As long as he could survive the heavenly tribulation, he could truly be reborn. If Chinyu were to make a move, he would definitely do it before the heavenly tribulation ended. In other words, this was the best opportunity. Chinyu could appear at any moment. As he thought of this, True Sage Thousand Nether took a deep breath and sent a message. True Sage Baizu and True Sage Wanlu, prepare to take action at any time. Yes, no problem. Chinyu was the one with the most words. His tone was relaxed because he was in a good mood right now. There were countless evil people in the world, but how many could he meet? But since he had met one, he was naturally happy to be able to send him on his way. Was the Black Turtle Patriarch an evil person? Then it depended on the perspective. From his point of view, everything he did was for survival. And survival was the instinctive pursuit of all living beings in the world. Of course, it could not be considered wrong. But from the perspective of the Zhongzhu siblings, the Black Turtle Patriarch was simply scum. Flaying his skin, pulling out his tendons, grinding his bones, and scattering his ashes could barely dispel their hatred. Coincidentally, Chinyu was from the perspective of the Zhongzhu siblings today, and this feeling of pushing people into the abyss while being ignorant. TSK, not to mention, it really made him feel a little good. He had a psychological sense of superiority. Even the Dragon Sage of the East Sea could not do anything to the dignified Black Turtle Patriarch. His turtle shell was impervious to swords and spears, and his defense was so strong that it made people feel despair. But so what? Wasn't he still schemed against by me? No wonder there were so many bad people in the world. It turned out that it really felt good to scheme against others. Moreover, it saved him energy. Otherwise, If he really had to face the Black Turtle Patriarch head-on, then even if he succeeded in the end, he would still have to break a few of his teeth. Qianyu was waiting for Qinyu to come out, but Qianyu knew that he would soon lose the mood. Heavenly thunder descended. The entire earth trembled, and the dungeon was instantly pierced through. Blinding lightning flooded everyone's eyes. The Black Turtle Patriarch's complexion changed. He roared and punched out. The pitch-black sphere above his head released an endless power of darkness, vast and mighty like a dragon. The momentum was astonishing and the strength was boundless. But in front of heavenly tribulation, everything was dregs. The pitch-black dragon instantly shattered, and the darkness was torn apart by thunder. In the next moment, the turtle shell was wrapped in lightning. The Black Turtle Patriarch spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes filled with shock, anger, and horror. Qianyu, what is going on? The target of heavenly tribulation was actually him. It shouldn't have been like this. The heavenly tribulation had already locked on its Zhangzhu and Songhua. He should have controlled the power of darkness to resist it, and after withstanding it several times, they would be struck down by the tribulation thunder and be reborn. But now, the heavenly tribulation came crashing down on him without the slightest bit of hesitation. The darkness transmutation ritual was managed by Qianyu, and the entire layout of the ritual was completed by him. If such a fatal mistake occurred, the first person to blame would be him. If it weren't for the fact that he needed Qianyu to solve the problem and reverse the situation, the Black Turtle Patriarch swore that he would personally tear him to shreds. Bang! Another thunderous roar erupted above his head, spreading into the Black Turtle Patriarch's ears. This was the soul-luring bell. Qianyu. Rumble, rumble. The second bolt of tribulation lightning fell, and the tortoise shell was wrapped in raging lightning. Inside, the Black Turtle Patriarch's whole body was twitching, and tiny wounds appeared on the surface of his body. He looked like a pottery figurine that had been smashed and then glued back together. Qianyu was stunned. His thoughts went blank for a moment, and his complexion paled. There was a problem with the darkness transmutation ritual, and the substitute hadn't worked. No, it wasn't just that. It was more like the position of the main body and substitute had been reversed. Zhangzhu and Songhua, who should have withstood the heavenly tribulation, were safe and sound, but the Black Turtle Patriarch had already begun to experience tribulation. But the key point was that this was not a heavenly tribulation that could be forcefully resisted. It was an erasure from the will of the vast Yang world. Once it began, it would only end when the tribulation taker perished. If the Black Turtle Patriarch was killed by the heavenly tribulation, St. Qianyu's heart chilled. If he ruined the plans of the dark world, even with his status, he would have to pay a heavy price. But the question was, how could this be? He was the one who completed the entire ceremony, and he was the one who presided over the entire transformation process today. Everything had gone smoothly and normally without any problems. But the Black Turtle Patriarch had become the one to withstand the heavenly tribulation. Bang! The third bolt of tribulation thunder fell. Qianyu, the Black Turtle Patriarch, cried out in pain. The cracks on the surface of his body accelerated, and the flesh and blood that had been restored to life began to fall off, turning into powder beneath the ravaging lightning. His tall and straight body became stooped once more. As the flesh and blood fell off, his body began to rot. The blood that flowed out turned pitch black and emitted a foul stench. At the same time, with loud, crackling sounds, black energy constantly left his body. This was the strength of darkness being stripped away. The mucus formed by the rotting flesh on the surface of Xiao Chen's body kept bubbling. It was like he had been thrown into a pot of boiling oil and was being fried. The pain was unimaginable. St. Qianyu's forehead was covered with sweat. He roared out, "I know. Don't shout anymore. Let me think about what went wrong. There must have been a problem." Suddenly, his eyes turned and fell on by Zhu and Qianyu, who had been alarmed by the sudden change and had appeared one after another. There was no problem with his operation, and there was also no problem with the darkness transformation ritual. Now that such a major mistake had occurred, the greatest possibility was that someone was playing tricks on him, and these two true saints of darkness were the greatest suspects. But now, before Saint Qianyu could speak, Qianyu sneered. His cold and gloomy voice was suffused with an oppressive pressure that left one in despair. Qianyu shouldn't be suspecting that the two of us did something, right? You were the one who presided over the ritual, and everything was within your perception. Even if the two of us mobilized the slightest bit of strength, you would still be able to sense it. So why would you make such an expression? Or perhaps you already decided to deliberately frame us. True Saint Bai, you already harbored a deep hatred towards Qianyu. You brat, you have been plotting against me for who knows how many years, and you even hypocritically call me to come to the EC. I even thought that you wanted to share a lucky chance with me. But now, it seems that you were clearly worried that I didn't die a miserable enough death, and now you want to pin a big hat on me. As for wise Saint Qianyu and Patriarch Xiangui, who were originally working together, ended up like this, True Saint Bai too believed that it must be the extremely sinister and cunning Qianyu who was up to no good. He must be plotting something again. True Saint Bai coldly sneered as he met his gaze. Qianyu, I will truthfully report this matter to the dark world. True Saint Qian, you was about to go crazy. First of all, what Qianyu said was correct. But what Bai said was even more terrifying. He felt as if he had fallen into a trap that had been laid out long ago. Who is it? Who is it? Suddenly, a figure appeared in the depths of his mind. Then, he thought about how this person still hadn't appeared. Qianyu, it must be Qianyu. True Saint Qianyu screamed. He's here, he's here. To think that he could even guess this correctly. Qianyu felt that he had to take back his previous judgment of Saint Qianyu. In truth, this person was quite intelligent. Beneath the cover of darkness, Qianyu's lips curved up in a cold smile. The bit of blood that he had placed into the mark did indeed come from the black turtle old ancestor, but it wasn't just that. There was also something else. After he killed the 36 descendants of the black turtle old ancestor, he had stripped out something from their soul fragments. When it fused into the drop of blood, this drop of blood turned into a simple but terrifying puppet. According to the stone pagoda, it was called the 36 soul locking puppet, and its target was the black turtle old ancestor. The name was complex, and it was troublesome to create. But it seemed that the results were quite good. This puppet entered the transformation ceremony and was absorbed by the mark. It became a living target that attracted the heavenly tribulation, forcefully replacing Saint Qianyu's arrangements and causing the heavenly tribulation to fall onto the black turtle old ancestor's head. If it weren't for this, where would Qianyu have found the time to kill so many people? How could he have gathered the number 6636? Saint Qianyu had guessed correctly, but unfortunately, there was no reward. Not just that, but the black turtle old ancestor didn't want to hear him say anything. Qianyu did it? What did he do it? Everything was clearly handled by him. But in the end, all he did was casually shout, and he wanted to extricate himself. There was no such reasoning in this world. And the most important thing right now was that he didn't care who did all of this. All he wanted was to live on. Whoever didn't let him live, he would drag him down with him. The black turtle patriarch, who had been reduced to a pile of rotten flesh, let out a hysterical roar. I don't care what the reason is. You have to save me, Qianyu. I can't die. I absolutely can't die. He paused for a moment and then roared out each word from the depths of his throat. If I cannot live, you will be buried with me. This was a pleasant surprise. The dying black turtle old ancestor had gone crazy. Even if he hadn't lost his reason, there wasn't much left of him. Just by looking at his rotten flesh and staring at Qianyu, one could tell that he wasn't joking around. The boat of friendship had capsized just like that, and it had even capsized so thoroughly. Stone Pagoda, can this soul-locking puppet of yours be solved? The Stone Pagoda said, I can. You can, and yet you speak so calmly. There must be a prerequisite. The Stone Pagoda lightly said, I need time. With a true saint boundary, even if I find the root of the problem, it will take at least a quarter hour. Qianyu praised, well done. Let alone a quarter hour, with the black turtle old ancestor's current condition, a few more bolts of heavenly thunder would shatter him to pieces. Qian Yu's complexion paled. He hadn't found the problem, and even if he did, he might not be able to solve it immediately. He feared the black turtle old ancestor could not be saved. How did things reach this step? Everything was clearly under his control. He had set up a trap to lure Qian Yu, waiting for him to appear so that he could attack with 100 trace and myriad flow. After suppressing him, everyone would divide up his flesh and drink his blood. Saint Qian Yu couldn't figure it out, but his silence allowed the black turtle old ancestor to clearly see his fate. He would die. In truth, many years ago, when he escaped from the Lost Garden, the black turtle old ancestor had an intuition that he would die a difficult death. Later experiences proved his intuition correct. Apart from the beginning, he had fallen into a painful torment. No one was willing to die, much less the black turtle old ancestor who was strong enough to fight a true saint head-on and not be at a disadvantage. Moreover, the reason he couldn't step into the true saint realm was not because his talent was lacking, nor was it because his cultivation was lacking. The only reason was that he came from the Lost Garden. The black turtle old ancestor certainly wasn't willing. He tried countless methods, but all of them ended in failure. Just as the black turtle old ancestor was about to accept his fate, the world of darkness came knocking on his door. In truth, it had been said more than once that one of the cruelest things in the world was to give you hope and then push you back into the abyss. This was enough to destroy anyone's will and cause the greatest anger and despair. For instance, the black turtle old ancestor. Qian, you can't save me. You can't save me. It's your fault. It's all your fault. You betray my trust. Die. I want you to die with me. The black turtle old ancestor's completely rotten face was fierce and horrifying. Saint Qian Yu's complexion changed. Black turtle, don't go crazy. This has nothing to do with me. What he said was the truth, but unfortunately, no one listened to him. Bang! A terrifying strength instantly arrived. Saint Qian Yu was sent flying away. Before he could catch his breath, his pupils shrank and shock filled his face. Because at this time, the rotten black turtle old ancestor was rushing towards him, his turtle shell sparkling with lightning. Die! I will drag you down with me. Crazy, this black turtle old ancestor had gone completely crazy. Ahem. All right, to be honest, Qian Yu had no idea what this thing was or what it was used for. But it didn't matter as long as true Saint Bai Yu knew. Looking at his reaction just now, he could roughly guess what was going on. His thoughts raced, and he continued to roar. The 9 Qian Yu of the Peach Garden, the good fortune of the Lost Garden, the strength of a pre-celestial spirit. Hee, what a great pie, but from start to finish we haven't seen a single trace of Qian Yu. Sage Thousand Nether, on the other hand, you single-handedly controlled the darkness transformation ritual and sent Patriarch Black Turtle into a desperate situation. Then, you summoned the fire of eternal night. Now that he is the one suffering, I'm afraid that it will be mine true Saint Bai Tu's turn next. Right? Qian Yu. Oh, Qian Yu, I have truly underestimated you. You actually dare to have such evil thoughts. Are you going to betray the dark world? How dare you? True Saint Bai Tu's expression changed again and again. The anger and fear in his eyes turned into extreme coldness as he glared at Sage Thousand Nether. It was as if he had finally seen through this person. Qian Yu, you are courting death. With an angry roar, the terrifying aura of the darkness true Saint erupted like a volcano. It must be like this. There was no Qian Yu of the Peach Garden at all. All of this was Qian Yu and Patriarch Black Turtle's plot. It was just that Black Turtle was too stupid and fell into Qian Yu's trap, which was why he ended up like this. As for true Saint Thousand Nether Skull, it was clear at a glance. This bastard actually wanted to devour their darkness source. Betray the dark world? No. Qian Yu wanted to become the new master of the dark world. As long as he succeeded in his plot and used the fire of eternal night to devour their darkness source, Not even the great wilderness would be able to do anything to him. The more he thought about it, the more frightened he became. The more he thought about it, the stronger his killing intent became. Fortunately, Patriarch Black Turtle had gone crazy and used the heavenly tribulation to force out Qian Yu's true colors. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Boom! Another bolt of tribulation lightning fell. The fire of eternal night was instantly pierced through, but it didn't collapse. Just this point alone was enough to show how terrifying it was. Qian Yu spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale. He waved his hand to repair the damage to the fire of eternal night. His mouth was so bitter that he wanted to cry. He couldn't help but doubt his life once more. How did things end up like this? That's right, he had hidden the fire of eternal night. But in all honesty, Qian Yu had never thought of harming Bai Yu and Wan Lu. At most, he was preparing to use it at a critical moment. He would borrow the power of Bai Yu and Wan Lu to push the power of the fire of eternal night to the limit and directly burn Qian Yu to death. With the deterrence of the fire of eternal night, Qian Yu was very confident. But who knew that things would turn out like this? And more importantly, the yellow mud had fallen into his pants. Even if he had 100 mouths, he wouldn't be able to explain it clearly, because Qian Yu's words sounded plausible. The Scarlet Peak Strait had been destroyed, and most of the sea race had died. It would be difficult for him to find a witness to prove that Qian Yu was really here. Even if he found one, would Bai Yu and Wan Lu believe him? Meeting their eyes, Qian Yu's heart was even more bitter. Listen to me, it's not like this. Just as Saint Qian Yu's heart was filled with bitterness and he was powerless to explain, Lord Dragon Sage in the tent could no longer sit still. The heavenly tribulations fell one after another. If nothing went wrong, it would end soon. But at this moment, a terrifying collision of auras erupted. What was this? It was obvious that Qian Yu had made a move. He had actually made a move. Although he had expected it, when it really happened, Dragon Sage couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He thought that this kid was really a tiger. Wasn't it good for him to be alive? Why did he have to risk his life? It was just women. There were many of them in this world. Not to mention, with Qian Yu's cultivation, he could get as many as he wanted with a flick of his finger. Yet, he was willing to give up his life for such a trivial matter. Lord Dragon Sage didn't want to say whether he was stupid or not. In fact, he felt that he didn't have time to think about such nonsense. Because Qian Yu's aura hadn't appeared. What did this mean? What a simple matter. This meant that Qian Yu had already been suppressed by someone. 3 darkness true saints. When the Black Turtle old ancestor survived the heavenly tribulations and completely transformed into darkness, there would be 4. If he wanted to make a move, he had to be quick. Perhaps a group of darkness true saints were suppressing Qian Yu. If he was late, he wouldn't be able to make it. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to do it now. Roar. With a dragon's roar, the entire tent was instantly torn apart. Lord Dragon Sage, who had returned to his true form, brazenly tore through the sea surface and headed straight for the Scarlet Peak Strait. He didn't think of taking everything for himself. But if Lord Dragon Sage wanted to eat the meat, he wanted a share of the benefits. If anyone dared to refuse, he would catch them and kill them. As for Qian Yu, he was courting death. He couldn't blame anyone else. Of course, he couldn't blame Dragon Sage. The Yar Master would definitely cause trouble for him later. But after he ate the meat, his strength would definitely skyrocket. At that time, it would be hard to say who would be the one to beat up. With this thought in mind, Lord Dragon Sage approached. Saints might care a little about human relationships, but in the end, the only thing they cared about was cultivation. And Qian Yu now represented Dragon Sage's advancement. He might even be able to fill the vacancy of the ruler. Sage Thousand Nether was interrupted halfway through his sentence. He looked up abruptly, and his pupils shrank. It's Dragon Sage of the East Sea. Why is this old guy here? And with such a murderous and fiery look? He didn't realize that the moment Dragon Sage's aura appeared, the murderous intent in true Saint Bai Yu's eyes skyrocketed. It was true. Originally, Bai Yu had some doubts about Qian Nether's cooperation with Dragon Sage of the East Sea. This was because the dark world would rarely make contact with the true saints of the outside world, unless it was absolutely necessary. But now that Qian Nether had been exposed, and Dragon Sage of the East Sea was coming to kill him, wasn't this evidence enough? So what Wan Lu said was true. No, maybe he only knew what was on the surface. All the conspiracies originated from Qian Nether, and he was the one who planned everything. In the darkness, Qin Yu smiled. He thought to himself, you can't blame me for this. Lord Dragon Sage was the one who rushed in first. If there's trouble after this, you have to share half of it with me. This feeling of being a scapegoat and having a companion was indeed very comfortable. Rumble, the seawater above his head was torn apart, letting out an earth-shattering roar. In order to intimidate all the darkness true sages, Longsheng had brought out 120% of his strength. Together with the might of the East Ocean, it was truly earth-shattering. Qin Yu rushed into the sky, and a cold roar came from the darkness. Baiyu, go deal with Qian Nether. If you and I want to live, let's fight. True Saint Baiyu took a deep breath and looked at Qin Yu, who rushed into the sky. A trace of emotion flashed in his eyes. There are still good people in my dark world. In the East Sea, Dragon Sage had obtained the power of the small world, and the aura he released now was terrifyingly strong. In comparison, Qian Nether, who had lost the flame of eternal night, was undoubtedly easier to deal with. He chose a strong enemy and gave Qian Nether, who was easy to deal with. He was a good person. Of course, the reason why True Saint Baiyu gave him the good guy card was because True Saint Wan Lu had never lied to him. He was a trustworthy companion. Taking a deep breath, True Saint Baiyu took a step forward. Qian Nether die. He would definitely not betray his companion's trust and let True Saint Wan Lu fall into a situation where he was pincered. If he could escape unscathed today, he would definitely ask for Chu Wan Lu's real name. He would definitely befriend him. Lord Dragon Sage suddenly realized that the situation was a little different from what he had imagined. Where's Qin Yu? Why didn't he see this brat? There were indeed 3 darkness true saints, but all of them were at daggers drawn. It didn't seem like they were going to join forces to drink blood and eat meat. Just as Lord Dragon Sage was frowning in thought, a darkness true saint rushed into the sky. His aura was terrifying, and darkness covered the sky. Long Sage, you actually dare to join forces with Qian Nether to plot against us. You are courting death. What are you saying? This dragon doesn't understand. Long Sage felt that the script was wrong, but the other party didn't give him a chance to speak at all. A terrifying power of darkness came crashing down. Wrong. Something must have gone wrong somewhere. But now, Long Sage didn't have the time to think. He opened his mouth and spat out a breath, which collided with the power of darkness. The surrounding seawater instantly exploded, forming a frightening pale white shockwave that roared and swept in all directions. So strong. Wasn't it said that when a darkness true saint appeared in the world, they would be suppressed by the will of the world? Could it be that the person in front of him was an exception? Although he wasn't afraid, Long Sage didn't want to fight for no reason at all. With meat to eat, he didn't fear anything. But if he had to risk his life without any benefits and even become mortal enemies with the darkness true saint, this was simply too much of a loss. Wait a moment. Lord Dragon Sage's eyes widened abruptly, and he nearly choked on his saliva. Chapter 13:21. Because at this moment, a voice rang in his mind. Thank you, Lord Dragon Sage, for your help. I'm very grateful. Qin Yu. It's Qin Yu. Cough, 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 cough. Who the hell can tell me what the hell is going on? Is my old dragonzers not working well? Or has the world gone crazy? It's a darkness true divine in front of me. As if sensing Lord Dragon Sage's disbelief and disbelief, the voice continued. Lord Dragon Sage, you heard it right. It's me, Qin Yu of the Peach Garden. I won't say too many words of gratitude. Next, I hope Lord Dragon Sage will cooperate with me and continue to act. Then, we can watch the 2 darkness true divine fight with their lives. Long Sage's eyes widened, and he seemed to have lost his soul. At this moment, he suddenly understood everything. How could there be two darkness, true divine? It was Qin Yu who had been pretending from the beginning. Then, he didn't know what he did to make the situation like this. He didn't look carefully just now. Now that he glanced around, the two darkness, true divine, were fighting with each other. Looking at their movements and aura, they were definitely fighting with their lives. Apart from that, there was a ball of black flame which seemed to contain something. Flame of eternal night. F*CK. It's the ultimate weapon of the darkness world. It actually appeared here. Suddenly, a heaven's tribulation fell and lightning exploded, illuminating the thing that was wrapped inside. Old Ancestor Black Turtle. It was actually Old Ancestor Black Turtle. He might be mistaken about other things, but he would never mistake the turtle shell that broke one of his dragon teeth. The heaven's tribulation was actually Old Ancestor Black Turtle. How could this be? Since the darkness world wanted to help him complete the transformation, they must have made full preparations. Wait, now that two darkness true divine were fighting with their lives in front of him, what else was impossible? Qin Yu, it must be Qin Yu. Long Sage swore that all this was definitely related to him. What did this guy do? Not only could he disguise as a darkness true divine, but he also provoked Old Ancestor Black Turtle into the abyss. He was simply a devil. Lord Dragon Sage's complexion changed again and again. A sharp light burst out from the depths of his eyes. Yes, what Qin Yu said is correct. I only came here because of the close relationship between the East Sea and the Peach Blossom Garden. In addition, I also think highly of the Peach Blossom Garden's Mr. Ninth. That's it. I'm good at acting. Isn't it just a fake fight? Back then, that bastard who planted the peaches and sold the peaches also pretended to fight with me. But he was shameless and suddenly dealt a heavy blow. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been so embarrassed back then. Lord Long Sheng tried his best to calm down as he thought of all these messy thoughts. He forced a smile and said, "Ahem, it seems like I did something unnecessary. Even without my help, Miss Ninth could have easily settled everything. To tell the truth, Qin Yu could guess Long Sheng's purpose in rushing into the Scarlet Peak Strait, even if he didn't use his knees to think. However, the world of adults was like this. They could still be good friends, even if they saw through it. Otherwise, there was no way they could survive in this difficult world. He didn't blame her, but even if he could understand her, it would offset the guilt he felt before. So, he would plot against her. There was nothing to be embarrassed about. Lord Dragon Sage, what are you saying? If it wasn't for your help, how could I, Qin, be so relaxed? He paused for a moment before he continued. But then again, East Sea is a big place. It doesn't seem like I'm alone. Even if I'm hated by the Dark World, the Yard Master can still push all the blame onto me. TSK. But Lord Dragon Sage, I'm afraid it's going to be difficult. Hearing this, Long Sheng almost shed tears of regret. If he had known it would be like this, he wouldn't have rushed in even if he was beaten to death. But what was done could not be undone, and the yellow mud fell on his pants. Even if it wasn't done to him, it would still be the same. Afterwards, I'll explain to the Dark World that I was just passing by. Do you think they'll believe me? I'll believe you, my ass. With a wry smile, Long Sheng said, "Please advise me, Miss Ninth. If I can avoid becoming enemies with the Dark World, that would be for the best." Qin Yu punched out, and the dark aura surged. From the outside, it looked absolutely imposing and majestic. Don't just talk. You have to act professionally, Lord Dragon Sage. Otherwise, you won't be able to watch the show and will be dragged off the stage. After waiting for Long Sheng to respond, he coughed lightly and continued. It's hard to say. You're already here. Don't worry about whether you've intervened or not. Even the death of the Old Ancestor Black Turtle won't be enough to clear his name. Long Sheng swallowed a curse at the tip of his tongue. It's all your fault, you bastard. You're the one who poked the hornet's nest. Why should I be punished together with you? But after thinking about it, Qin Yu didn't ask him to come, and he barged in by himself. Therefore, Long Sheng's face became even more ugly. He wished he could give himself a big slap. He thought to himself, I've sinned. I've really sinned. Miss Ninth is right. So, What do you think we should do next? Bear it. Once this matter is over, I'll definitely stay away from Chinyu. This kid is a jinx. Wherever he goes, trouble follows. There's no limit to his torment. Chinyu flicked his sleeves, and there was another earth-shattering commotion. The corner of his mouth twitched. But actually, it's simple. Chinyu want to make a move on me, so he summoned 2 darkness true saints. Of course, Lord Long Sheng saw the truth. There was an accident during the summoning process. Anyway, there's one thing I'm sure of. Be it Chinyu or Saint Baiyu, they won't tell anyone else about this. In other words, as long as we do it cleanly and cleanly, no one will know what happened here. Long Sheng was dumbfounded. He looked at Chinyu, then at Chinyu again. After confirming that Chinyu wasn't joking, he sucked in a breath of cold air. His words were simple and easy, but the meaning behind them was 2F** king scary. Simply put, Chinyu wanted to kill people. He wanted to kill Saint Baiyu and Chinyu, the 2 darkness true saints. What did he think a true saint was? A harmless and delicious cabbage that grew by the roadside? Could he just casually chop them up and cook them? If a true saint could be killed so easily, they wouldn't be worthy of being called a big shot. They would have died a long time ago. Chinyu just killed one not long ago. The Netherworld saint's corpse hadn't even turned cold yet. Maybe he really thought that killing a true saint was a routine operation. Arrogant. Simply arrogant. Even if he was willing to cooperate, even if the 2 darkness true saints turned hostile for some reason, there was basically no chance of success. As long as there was the slightest sign, they would turn around and leave. There was no way to stop them. Long Sheng felt like he was going crazy. He had to control his emotions and force himself not to show it. Mr. Ninth, I think this method might. He was interrupted midway. Chinyu calmly said, Lord Long Sheng, do you think it won't work? Of course, I admit that there is some difficulty. Perhaps Lord Long Sheng can give a better suggestion. If I knew what to do, why would I still be talking nonsense with you? Long Sheng's voice began to tremble. Is there really no other way? Chinyu shook his head. There is nothing in this world that doesn't require a price. If Lord Long Sheng doesn't want to be enemies with the darkness world, this is the only way. Kill Chinyu and Baiyu and cover up everything that happened in the Scarlet Peak Strait. At that time, even if we are suspected, we can't admit it. If the darkness world doesn't have concrete evidence, would they dare to attack the East Sea? The rulers won't let them do as they please. Of course, then again, Lord Long Sheng can also leave now. In any case, you really haven't done anything and are different from me. Perhaps you can explain things? Long Sheng clenched his teeth so hard that they nearly shattered. He wanted to slap himself in the face once more. He could clearly see that Chinyu had been planning to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots from the start. It was just that he was a bit stupid and obediently delivered himself to Chinyu's door. No matter what, he could still leave now, and he was also different from me. This was clearly a threat, a direct threat. The meaning was clear. If he couldn't kill Chinyu and Baiyu today, then he would be hunted down by the darkness world, and he wouldn't be able to live in peace either. He would definitely be dragged into this mess. This surnamed Qin, he was shameless enough, ruthless enough. He took a deep breath and let out a long breath. Good. I will join forces with Mr. Ninth. Long Sheng accepted his fate. Tell me what to do. Chinyu praised him and then briefly explained the situation. The dragon god took a deep breath and roared. Chinyu, since the matter has been exposed, then hurry up and kill them to prevent any future troubles. His acting skills were indeed top-notch. His tone was filled with exasperation and helplessness, followed by an icy cold, killing intent. It couldn't be any more real. It was so real that Chinyu's mind buzzed. He couldn't help but wonder if he had really joined forces with the East Sea Dragon Sage and had forgotten about it because his brain wasn't working well. No, it couldn't be like that. There was no such thing. Chinyu roared into the sky. Anger and annoyance intertwined his chest, and he spat out another mouthful of blood. He was on the verge of exploding. Who could tell him what had happened? The interrogation of his soul appeared for the third time. How did things develop to this point? Baiyu sneered. It's useless even if you shout. Chinyu, your scheme has been completely exposed. Today, I will act on behalf of the darkness world and eliminate you, traitor. It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. Chinyu. It must be Chinyu. He must have called the East Sea Dragon Sage. Say whatever you want. I only believe what I see. Chin, you should stop quibbling. No one can save you. Chin, you spat out another mouthful of blood. This feeling of being wrongly accused, yet being powerless to prove himself, was truly terrible. His breathing became heavy and his eyes turned blood red. In the current situation, it didn't matter what happened. The Black Turtle Old Ancestor was finished. He would definitely be punished. And with Bai Yu and Wan Lu testifying against him, what awaited him was a horrifying punishment. With his status as a true saint, he might not die, but he would be suppressed in the darkness world and wouldn't be able to see the light of day for many years. Moreover, during this time, he would be interrogated over and over again. Just thinking about it made one's heart skip a beat. There was no escape. All the cultivators of the darkness world had been locked down. Unless they died, they would never be able to leave the darkness world. Qin Yu's eyes turned increasingly blood red. He suddenly roared, "You forced me! You forced me!" He lifted a hand and pressed down. Flames of eternal night refine him. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.